be like, fuck it, just go all the way.
Yeah.
All right, we are live. Welcome to Texas Runoff Night, a special joint broadcast here. Decision Desk HQ, DDHQ. My friend Chris Cillizza of So What. I'm Chuck Todd of the Chuck Toddcast, and here we are. We promised you we're probably going to be with you just about. This is going to be your Tuesday night action, a Super Tuesday, if you will. And tonight, it's a runoff in just one state, but it feels a lot bigger than that, Mr. Cillizza.
Everything's bigger in Texas, my friend. As my father-in-law used to say, if one is good, two is better. I've learned two things. One, I think I learned from Skelly. The other one I read in the Texas Tribune today that I will share with people who are tuning in. First of all, welcome. Thrilled. We try to do this virtually anytime there's a big primary night, which is basically every Tuesday going forward. Fact one that I think I learned from Skelly in Decision Desk HQ is this is the longest days between primary and runoff of any state. I mean, it's
You mean the longest
gap in between the votes. So
round one and the runoff.
Correct. So the second might have been the first one we
March
did this
3rd,
year.
Right?
March, right?
Yeah, it was March 3rd.
They were opening night. They were our opening act. They were week
we
zero.
Are all the way back on May 26th. I think it's like Skelly. Is it 78 days in between?
84.
I mean, that is
84 days.
That's why we don't go to Cillizza for the math, Mr. Skelly.
Yeah,
we go to you.
I was told there would be no math. Yeah. It's like a whole other race, and so that's point one. Point two, which is just a fun, interesting fact that I should have known but didn't. Neither John Cornyn nor Ken Paxton have ever lost a race for office. So for one of them, that streak ends tonight. Cornyn, I would have guessed. Paxton, I didn't know, but neither have ever lost before. That's all I got.
No. Yeah. Something's got to give.
Unload the notebook. What do you got?
Chris did mention that, Texas has this incredibly long runoff process. Right. But I think probably, obviously we're all watching the Republican primary, Republican runoff race. We even have actually a few votes. It looks like have just come in.
Well, we can start. Let's put it up because you're going to see this map. Let's go through the rhythm of the night here of what's being reported. So obviously, give us the order of the votes that are likely to be counted. When were they cast?
Yes. So most of the votes that are going to be reported over the next half hour or so and 40 minutes are going to be votes that were cast early. I suspect that those votes are more likely to be favorable to John Cornyn, relatively speaking, in the Republican Senate runoff. And again, that's because the perhaps more MAGA, diehard, more conservative Republican voters are somewhat more likely to vote on Election Day. I think for Cornyn, there's at least a chance that he is leading after we've gotten a fair amount of the early vote. But then the Election Day vote might swamp him.
The pattern in round one was he was ahead, and we kept waiting. Yeah. Well, as the Election Day vote comes in, we expect Paxton to overtake him, and of course, he never quite did that.
And for people who forgot, since it was 84 days ago, Cornyn finished at 42, Paxton 40 and a half, and then Wesley Hunt, the congressman who, in an act of amazing political courage, I'm joking, decided to wade into the primary for Paxton minutes after Donald Trump endorsed Ken Paxton a week ago.
Pretty brave.
So anyway, Cornyn did lead, to Chuck's point. Cornyn did not a huge lead, but he did lead by 1.5 points when this initially happened.
So if Cornyn's not leading the vote count, in the first hour here, obviously we're not calling anything until the statewide polls close at 9 p.m. in the western part of the state. But if he's not ahead before Election Day vote comes in, that's a really bad sign, right?
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, we are expecting. I should note that we are expecting more early vote on the whole. So around 870,000 early votes, and then around a bit less than 500,000 on Election Day. That still ends up being more votes cast early than on Election Day. Might speak to I think somewhat lower turnout than what we saw. Yeah, definitely lower turnout, a lot lower turnout than what we saw in the first round, which might be good for Paxton. Historically, that's been good for the more conservative candidate, but we'll see.
Let's bring in Jessica Taylor, who of course is the chief Senate editor, state Senate Gov, everything there.
Look at that background.
From
That is like a professionally curated background.
It is with Amy Walter. Jessica, how are you? Jessica Taylor, the Cook Report. How are you?
Wait, we can't hear you.
Oh no, are you on mute?
Oh no,
we've got an audio issue. We'll
bring you back.
We'll bring you back.
Bring her back up.
We'll fix that in the virtual green room there.
Hey, Skelly, while we're waiting for Jess's audio, are we assuming that like Cornyn is going to run well in suburban Houston, Austin, San Antonio, Dallas? Like, is that, and then he has to run it up in those places because he's going to lose basically every rural county?
Yes. Let's actually, just to your point there, let's bring up the first round vote just to sort of give people.
While you're doing that, bring up that first round map. That's great to do. Jessica Taylor, this is the round 1 Republican primary map of Paxton Cornyn here. Welcome to the program.
So you do see him doing better in the Dallas proper, Austin area particularly, and somewhat better in Harris County, though the suburbs in Houston were definitely Paxton territory.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jessica. Welcome in.
Thank you. No, I was listening to what you all were saying, and like my first thought is, I'm looking here, Dallas County. If this is the early vote that we're getting in, Cornyn only barely ahead, still very early, of course, for all of this. Tarrant County,
if you're ahead.
Tarrant County only just, Paxton ahead. You're right. I mean, I think the surprise was on the primary night when Cornyn came in first. But if you're an incumbent who has 42%, that's still never a good sign. That was basically what I thought.
That's such a good point. If 58% of people who went, even on the primary 84 days ago, voted against the incumbent who had been there since 2002. I mean, that's a great point, Jess. Go ahead, Chuck. Sorry.
Do you have 2 different ratings depending on what happens tonight?
We do. Yeah. We will move this race to lean Republican if Paxton wins, and it will stay in likely Republican if it's Cornyn. So
you'd already that not an insignificant thing that you were already put it in likely and not solid.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Tallarico is obviously a good candidate. This is a bad environment for Republicans, but John Cornyn, I think, is still a solid enough candidate that if you are national Democrats, you look at this and say, is it worth spending this amount of money on someone who has outperformed in general elections before? I think they have cheaper, better races like Alaska, probably Iowa after next week if it's Turek as well. So yeah, we've already said that we will shift the rating if that will happen. So if you're a Cook Political Report subscriber, you will get a text alert and a ratings change this evening when the race is called. So.
And you should be a Cook Political Report with Amy Walters subscriber. Cookpolitical.com, correct, Jess? Is that the best way for people to find?
Yep.
2 things. I just want to make a point from the Decision Desk projection room. These are the really smart folks. I mean, Jeffrey's the face and smart, but these are the other smart folks involved. Just to the points you both were making. Tarrant County right now is Paxton plus 18. Dallas County is Cornyn plus 1. So,
oh my God.
You never to say it's over before it's over. But
as Jessica's colleague would say, I think I've seen enough.
Yeah, Wasserman homage.
That's and Tarrant County had to be a better Cornyn.
Yeah, he has to win in every.
He's
got to win a place like Fort Worth.
Got to win Fort Worth.
Yeah. Scully's point, he's got to win all those places because he's going to get run in every rural county.
I mean, for what it's worth, in the first round, he got about 45% in Tarrant, where Fort Worth is, and Paxton got 38%. Cornyn did. So, but if you're, right now it looks like he's getting a little bit less than that with about 2/3 of the vote in, and I don't think the trends are going to be necessarily moving in his direction.
No, because that's early vote, right, Jeffrey?
Yeah, yes, this is early vote. That's how we got so much.
Yeah, because quickly. I was expecting there might be sort of like a Cornyn mirage that we talked to. We were
exactly what we were all.
Totally.
I mean, we want to talk about. Talk about taking the wind out of a live stream, or anything you're doing. I think we all thought we were going to have a little Cornyn mirage for about an hour.
Yeah, but this is not an encouraging sign for John Cornyn.
This is going to be a quick night and the sun may
on
not even go
Washington
down.
I'm on Washington Journal at 7:30, so the more sleep I can get,
Yeah.
better for that.
Well, you may get a nice good night's sleep. We'll see what.
But hey,
we'll see how the races
for the
go.
folks watching, that if this does continue the way it's progressing,
Well, we got a lot of other races.
There are
No,
some
we got a
other
ton
races.
of other
Kelly
races.
is the most professional TV person out of all of us, Chuck.
You know,
Stay tuned.
We're here not to waste your time.
You know, in the 35th district, we've got a Democratic candidate who's said a bunch of controversial and potentially anti-Semitic things, and whether she wins could matter to whether that race.
I like the Texas
interesting or not.
Republican
An
AG race. Yes.
In case
Jessica,
you're wondering,
talk about that very quickly because it's got a member of Congress in it.
the chief strategist from Mr. Paxton's World, Mr. Jeff Rowe, just sent me a quick text to say they think it's over themselves.
Yeah.
They're basically declaring victory.
Jess, can you talk about that Texas AG Republican race? Because obviously Ken Paxton is the Republican Attorney General in Texas. He's vacating that job. Yeah. You have a member of Congress. Thank you, Jeffrey. You got a member of Congress.
I brought that up, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I expected Chip Roy to be doing better here. I think when he first got in the race, I would have thought that he would have sort of been a front runner. He has the Cruz endorsement and things, but Mays Middleton comes from an oil and gas family. He's branded himself MAGA Middleton. You know, anytime you can have a little alliteration there, it certainly doesn't hurt. I think he's an up and comer in Texas politics. He sort of tried to position himself in that Paxton mold. I mean, remember, Chip Roy has gone against the president sometimes too. So, I mean, Trump did not weigh in on this contest. So I think that's why it's a little bit murkier and we haven't seen as much polling, or at least, I haven't talked as, I think that the Senate race was a clearer cut story, especially after Trump weighed in. But yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering, my bigger question is, does John Cornyn join the YOLO caucus? Cornyn YOLO.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's the,
it's a great question.
There's one of the points I was making earlier today is that Trump already lost the Senate. The question now is whether the Republicans are going to lose the Senate.
Yeah.
Right. Like he can't get anything right now.
That's right.
He's got a majority against him in the Senate between Tillis, Collins, Murkowski, Cassidy, and you throw in
Todd,
whether
Todd
Cornyn's
Young,
there
Mitch
or not.
Mitch McConnell.
Yeah,
you got McConnell. You could Fetterman counters one. But that's it.
Just one vote, yeah.
Yeah, Fetterman's vote
this
is
is
only
all
worth
Mitch
one.
McConnell's revenge, I feel like, in a way.
Well said. Totally.
It's sort of,
But is it too little too late for him?
Yeah, I was just
it is.
Donald Trump got 3 conservative Supreme Court justices, but so did Mitch McConnell. I mean, those are people he would have wanted to. But yes. Hey, Jess, can I ask you a Texas Senate question that Chuck alluded to? You said if Paxton is the nominee, you're moving it to lean. If Cornyn is the nominee, you're keeping it at likely. Is there a scenario you see where did you consider moving it to toss up if Paxton is the nominee?
Yeah, we talked about it. I still think, that the environment, if we're in like a D+5, D+6, D+7, if we're inching up there, certainly we rarely make like kind of a 2 jump in a way. I think putting it in lean right now is where we will have it. And let's see when the general election fully engages. I mean, they have a lot of things. James Tallarico hasn't really been hit on yet. So I want to kind of see how he performs once he gets money spent against him in that regards. But I mean, listen, I also think that, when the polling we're seeing too, I mean, Tallarico is at like 45. Like I want to see him get closer to where does he inch up closer to 50?
Jessica, I'm glad you said that. One of the things that I've noticed happens in races that are like this, meaning you get an overperforming candidate in a state that party normally doesn't perform as well. And you'll see this candidate sit at 45 starting in April.
Right.
And the candidate is at 45 in August. And the candidate is at 45 in October.
Yeah.
It was 45-40. They were leading in April. It was 45-44 in August.
Yeah.
Suddenly it's 47-44, the incumbent party. And it's on either side of the aisle, right? When you see this, whether you're watching an overperforming candidate for Washington governor or an overperforming candidate for Colorado Senate, and that's I want to see Tallarico at 48, 49 consistently in different polling before I'll believe he can surpass the high water mark of 48 by Mr. O'Rourke.
And I would say to Jessica's point too, is like, the truth is he really hasn't had any sustained money spent against him on a message. Now, does Paxton raise the money he needs? Probably not, but there will be super PAC money and national money spent. Like, it's dumb, but Tallarico is not the worst. Like, I heard Paxton saying that the other day, like, to your point about MAGA Maze, like, if you can present, they're going to present this guy as a wacko leftist who thinks there are 6 genders and was wearing a mask until 6 months ago. Right, Jessica?
I mean, honestly, like when I saw, I think the Tallarico is actually really good. It in my head, I started singing like the Super Freak song. So
Rick James. Oh, hey, we have this is the other one they're doing. Lauren, super producer, points out we have the low T Tallarico spot. Can we do that real quick? And then we'll come back and have Jess talk, and then Jess will let you go.
Yeah. The Democrats have a weird candidate.
God is non-binary. There are many more than 2 biological sexes. In fact, there are 6. It is now existential that we try to reduce our meat consumption. The American flag is such a complicated symbol for most of us. Prophetic voices like Jesus have helped me reckon with my own whiteness, my own masculinity. Our southern border should be like our front porch. There should be a giant welcome mat out front. No need to sit and cry over, your whiteness or your masculinity. They're gonna call me a radical leftist.
Something that you love, that's not family or friends.
I love, I'm just saying this because it's on my mind, the trans children.
The Democrats have a weird candidate.
Low T Tallarico, too weak for Texas. Lone Star Liberty PAC is responsible for the content of this ad.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Jess.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to see parts of that in 30-second clips. And that's again why we're not putting it in toss up yet. I think that does this move or Paxton's are those like Houston moderates, the former Bush Republicans? What did they do? That's what I'm looking at. Is Tallarico too far to them? I mean, you listen to a lot of what he says other than this. I mean, and he comes across as like, he looks like a youth pastor and he sounds like one too. And that might be enough. But if they hear some of this stuff, which, I mean, some of this is obviously taken out of context, like the front porch thing. He also says there should be a welcome mat, but there needs to be a lock.
Yeah, exactly. It should be a good lock or whatever. Yeah.
You give people this. This happens in campaigns all the time. Obviously, if you give them a soundbite, they are going to clip it. And so, does he come across what debates do if they end up debating? Like, I think it's just too early right now. I mean, remember Paxton has won statewide before. So
I was saying, Jess, one of my favorite facts is neither Paxton nor Cornyn have lost a race ever in their lives.
You say that at the beginning.
Yeah. Go ahead, Chuck.
So, Jess, how do you, because the real impact of this race is the burden it is going to become on the Senate Leadership Fund and the NRSC. And, I don't,
Sorry, I was just laughing at the yellow on screen. There's just,
it's sort of, it's one of those things,
very Coldplay,
just that I know it's an intangible, right? Does this mean no chance Michael Whatley? Does this put John Sununu in a bad spot?
I think if you're John Sununu, that's probably money.
Mike Collins, or Derek Dooley,
that's probably money that's not going to you. I think I'm really interested in what we've seen over the past week with the Collins campaign, especially the tweet that they put out.
Disaster.
I mean, to me, that just speaks of like the mismanagement and he's had this aid on his campaign forever, and he's done like controversial things. I mean, he kicked a dog.
Yeah.
Right. This is not this aide's first. This is not this aide's first run-in with embarrassing his boss.
If it's Collins, do they look at Georgia and say, "Listen, we've got better ones"? To me, Derek Dooley is kind of generic Republican. He is a creation of Kemp, and he's the closest thing to Kemp that you have. And so, will you see people get behind him? I'm watching, but I'm
pretty sure Trump is not going to endorse Derek Dooley.
That's the thing I think too.
He's going to endorse Collins, so Collins wins that runoff.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if
And
he
then they
endorsed
back out of
Paxton, if he
Collins.
endorsed
Yeah.
Paxton, why would he not endorse Collins?
I know.
You know what I
That's
mean?
what I
Like,
think
it's not
too.
like Collins is no more. Paxton is much more problematic in a general.
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say much more. Collins is more problematic. Paxton is more problematic in a general than Collins.
Yeah.
They're both somewhat problematic, right,
Yeah.
Jessica?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So the point is that it
But,
chips away at
Paxton
all
has
these
more
other
baggage.
races.
I mean, Collins,
Yeah.
I think, has problems with the people around him. He has the social media posts and different things. Like, I mean, there is a House ethics investigation into him, and it stems from this aide partially too. So I'm really interested to see what happens there on June 16th on my birthday. So
There it is.
I get a Georgia and Alabama runoff for my birthday in 2 weeks.
All right, so let's
Maybe.
Jess
We
has
didn't
to
know what
get
else
up
we could
early.
get you.
Jess has to
We
get up
thought
early,
that
so
would work.
so watch her on C-SPAN tomorrow morning, 7:30 Washington Journal. Go to cookpolitical.com and subscribe. Trust us, it's worth your time. Jess,
you,
anything
guys.
else other than thank you for joining us as always?
No, I always enjoy this every Tuesday.
We got a bit. Yeah, we'll see it. Well, look, let's do a quick preview. Next Tuesday, we had Iowa Senate's the big one as
Yeah.
far as your world in California
Iowa
governor,
Senate,
right?
California Gov. I do
Right?
Gov as
California
well.
Gov and
so,
Iowa Senate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you
So-
think
And-
Turek in Iowa?
Hey man, South
probably-
Dakota governor, we could have a runoff in South
You
Dakota.
could, yeah, for
First time
35%.
ever.
Yeah, there
never
could be.
happened. It's never
Yeah,
happened.
I think Turek is the favorite there. I mean,
Okay.
when you have almost $10 million being spent in your favor,
Yeah.
TV moves, especially in primary. So I do think Turek is the favorite
Yeah.
there.
Hey,
So-
by the way, none of us on this screen have been paid any money by Tom Steyer.
No, that's true.
But my God, can you imagine
Although we're
being
probably
the guy
the only people, Chuck.
who took 400 grand?
Yeah, it's
Here's
unbelievable.
what I
400
think.
grand?
I think I think this is the problem that self-funding candidates have is they have these ads, they have themselves in these ads. I mean, look at Rick Jackson, how much he spent, and he still came in second last week. I
Yeah.
think that there are diminishing returns when you
Yeah.
spend your own money. David Trone faced this in Maryland.
Oh my God. Can I just
yeah.
tell you, it's the
So
best
many
part of watching
ads.
the advertisements right
Constant.
now between Trone and
April
and
McLean
Amy
Delaney.
Delaney. Oh my, yeah, they're fantastic.
This is a total sidebar if you live near us, but David Trone, whose family owns Total Wine, was a member of Congress, ran for the Senate, lost, is running again. But in his ads, the ads say re-elect David Trone. Like he's
He's the incumbent. Yeah.
Well, no, but it gets better. Amy Delaney voted with Donald Trump, and then in there it says 23% of the time.
Yeah.
which
David
like
Trump,
everybody
Donald
votes
Trump.
with.
He's
He
a
went to
Furman alum.
Furman?
He gave so when I went to Furman, we were a dry campus, and David Trone gave $10 million to redo the student center, and suddenly there's a bar on campus.
Oh wow, Mr. Total Wine.
Supposedly
what?
they weren't linked, but
That's why you watch our political coverage. You're not getting that kind of political analysis on Washington Journal.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jess.
Thank you all.
right,
Hey,
Jess,
I've got.
Hey
I've
there.
got- Can I
Oh,
do?
yeah, I was gonna
Can I tout one quick thing, Skelly?
Sure.
I just want people. Another reason why you should be watching Decision Desk HQ and not anywhere else is that this count, the Decision Desk HQ count in Texas, is 130,000 votes ahead of the NBC and the AP count. 130,000. Sorry, Jeffrey. Go ahead.
No worries. You had some people asking a couple questions about sort of counties, and so I thought it'd be useful to do a couple of comparisons between this and the first round. So this is Williamson County, which has become actually a very swingy county in statewide elections. Democrats are having an all decent night in Texas, and they haven't had many of those obviously recently. But if they're competitive, they're actually winning this county outside of Austin. So Austin suburbs. And this is a place where Cornyn did quite well in the first round. But you see you see Paxton's winning 58% to 42% right now. And in the first round, I just brought it up there, Cornyn at 49% of the vote and Paxton's down at 34%. So, it's just, and you're seeing this, it seems like just not a lot going well for Cornyn if he was going to have any chance of making this interesting.
By the way, we're looking at, am I right? Are we looking at about a 10% drop off in turnout from the primary to the runoff? It was about 1.8, 1.9 in the primary.
If we're at, well, no. Right now, I think our estimate has us at about.
You have like 1.2,
1.1,
right?
1.3, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
1.3, yeah. And in the first round, we had No, we had more like 2 million votes.
Okay, did they cross 2? I know the Dems
more,
outpolled them.
So it might
Remember?
be a third.
Yeah,
That
it was
was
close.
that was a
but they
big
did.
deal.
Same thing
The
as
Dems
Georgia.
outpolled them.
Yeah.
And that was,
it might be down a third, which is not what Cornyn needed. Cornyn needed this to be a runoff where people were staying engaged and high turnout. Yeah.
Hey, Skelly, we got Blake Berman from News Nation coming in a minute, but can we take 3 or 4 minutes and go through, a lot of people on my YouTube channel are asking about the 2 Democratic primaries in the House where you have a former member and a member and then 2 current members. Can you just quickly run through? I don't know what the vote is there, but that's, if Texas is going the direction it's going, this would be a place to look.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with the 33rd congressional district, where you have Representative Julie Johnson facing her predecessor, Colin Allred, who was briefly running for Senate, and then, not briefly, he was running for Senate for a while and then dropped out right before the filing deadline because Jasmine Crockett jumped into the Democratic race. But Allred is ahead right now. We've got a little more than half of the expected vote in. Allred led about 44-33 in the first round, so not looking too dramatically different here based on the vote that's in so far.
We have a call.
In fact, do we have a call?
We have a call, not in that race, but in Texas for 18.
Oh, well, that was quick. Let's move over to that race then. Give me 2 seconds, and I'll pull that one
this
up
is
too.
where the boiler room is moving faster.
Thanks. Well, hey, we just don't have as many. I mean, honestly, the big thing is we just don't have as many votes. So yes, we are in a position to project this race. The 18th congressional district, the incumbent versus incumbent race between Christian Menifee and Al Green.
This was the other one we were going to talk about. Yeah.
Yes, and Christian Menifee is dominating. This is in Houston, the Houston area. It's a seat that was redrawn to be about. It has much of the black community in Houston in it. It's about 50% African American.
And of course, Al Green is Mr. Kane shaking his cane.
Yeah, shaking his cane and walking out of the State of the Union is probably how most people know.
Because Menifee only led
it was really tight
by a couple points in the first round, but Green maybe was doing better with some more marginal primary voters who didn't show up with no Senate race at the top of the ticket.
By the way, it's just a cursory glance, but there's nothing really that close at the moment. Like everything is kind of, the closest race may be the Colin Allred House race at the moment.
And by the way, just one quick note.
Oh, actually, here's a good one.
Menifee, which we have not talked about real quick. Al Green is 78. Christian Menifee is 38. So, if you're looking, we've talked a little bit about, Allred and Julie Johnson is less of an age thing, but this is clearly an age issue. But also, Menifee's only been in Congress since January, I think. I mean, he's not been there long. Al Green has been there for a while. But anyway, just as we talk about the generational differences thing.
Yeah, and one other thing, I've noticed a few people being like, why aren't you guys projecting the Senate race yet? Part of the small, kind of the western El Paso corner of Texas, the polls close at 9:00 Eastern, so we will not be doing any projections.
Oh, this would be right if there was.
If it were all 8 o'clock in the,
people are still voting. You can still vote for another 32 minutes.
30 minutes.
Texas.
Yeah.
And Skelly, can we sneak one more in before Blake, which is Texas 35? I've got some people asking about.
So because then actually I have to jump over to where Blake was. So that's amusingly, there are very few votes, and then I'll be back. It's just I was texting with him a little bit ago.
Oh, okay.
So Texas 35. So this is the newly drawn seat that's Republican leaning, sort of around the San Antonio area. And you have State Representative John Lujan facing Carlos de la Cruz, who is a veteran who is actually the brother of Monica de la Cruz, who is the congresswoman from the 15th district. De la Cruz has Trump's endorsement. However, Lujan is well known, is backed by Greg Abbott. So there's a little bit of a proxy conflict there.
Interesting.
And Lujan was stronger in Bexar County, which is right here. That's the Bexar County part. That's San Antonio. Is in Bexar County. And that was his strongest part in the first round. So the fact that we don't have votes in from a couple of these other peripheral counties, I would think De La Cruz might be doing better once we get a few more votes there. And then on the other side of the aisle, you have the kind of the race with the infamous.
This is one that I think has gotten a lot of attention.
Yes, it
Yeah.
has gotten a ton of attention, and rightfully so. If I can bring it up here, apologies for the slowness. But Democrats were worried about Maureen Galindo, who made a number of, frankly, anti-Semitic comments. She is trailing here in the early going to Johnny Garcia, who's a deputy sheriff in the Bexar County Sheriff's Office, and was the candidate that basically all Democrats in the aftermath of that stuff about Galindo coming out were all rallying to. So,
and this is the one where Galindo has gotten like 900,000 in spending from this super PAC that it's not clear, but it's
called
probably
Lead
tied.
Left.
It's probably tied to Republicans, we think,
probably
right?
tied to Republicans.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I know it's early, but at least those are, I mean, certainly on the Republican side, it's a close race. All right, let's bring Blake in.
Yep.
If we can. I know he's here.
What's up, guys?
There he is. Hey, Blake.
How are you? How come you haven't called Texas yet? Oh, he
Yeah, stop asking those questions. Did Skelly just skip out on us?
He
literally
out.
is replacing.
Blake
He dropped the
Herman hosts-
casual. We've been texting and then skipped out and didn't even.
He does
say
that.
hi.
He just kind of like disappears. He's very into.
He's
He
the
must have
Irish
some
side to
Irish in him. Yeah, he must have some Irish in him. The Irish goodbye. Blake hosts the 6 p.m. hour on News Nation. Skelly's doing a TV hit. Of course, that's what he cares most about. Blake. First of all, thank you for doing this. Second,
Of course.
Chuck and I, I can't remember what it was. I think, Chuck, you'll remember, but I think it was the Illinois Senate race where the polling going in seemed to suggest Raja Krishnamurthy, but then very early in the night, the prediction markets really started to trend toward Juliana Stratton, the lieutenant governor, who wound up winning. And we were like, this will be an interesting test. Are the prediction markets right? And they were right. I looked at the prediction market this morning, Blake, for Paxton. I think it was Polymarket, Paxton, Cornyn. It was 96% Paxton. I know you do a fair amount of stuff with this. How do you, I mean, that now looks pretty
Right.
How do you manage that? Like, I continue to try to figure out how to put that in. I think we both pay attention to it now. I don't think you have a choice but to, but how do you factor it into what you do?
Have you gone back and seen that race over time?
In the prediction markets?
Yeah.
I have not.
So if you gave a 3-year-old 2 different color crayons and was like, draw a line from here to here, they would be like all intersecting each other. You know what I mean? Like, but by the time they got to point A and to point B, that's what that market has done. I think I try to go back and figure out how many times it's flipped.
Yeah.
But at last check, it was like 10 or 11 times, which when it just, went like this and this and this and this over the course of many, many months. And obviously the 2 big ones were, the initial, race a couple months ago, whenever that was. And then the Trump endorsement for Paxton in the recent weeks. So, yeah, I mean, look, a lot of times these things tell you, like I was just looking at it. It's funny you asked that. I was jumping on and I was like, wow, they're at 99% in the Cornyn Paxton race, which I think most people would sort of put it there. And I was like, has DDHQ called this yet? Just because I just got home from work and I was just trying to figure out everything that was going on. And nope, they haven't. And so, yeah, I mean, look, you've got some folks obviously jumping on it, but I mean, I don't know, like you look at what's happened with that one race over time. Is that maybe where this heads going forward when there's more volume, when there's more action, when there's more people being brought into it? Potentially. I obviously don't have that answer. I don't know what the future holds, but that race in particular, which is the one that's being focused on tonight, at least in those markets, has been notable given it just flipped and flipped and flipped over time.
And I mean, look, I think part of that at least is that, like we thought, I mean, we talked about, Chuck and I were talking about this before you were on, Blake, which is like, right after the primary, when which was, obviously forever ago now, but when Cornyn overperformed, I kind of thought like, Trump might get in and, endorse Cornyn and try to get, either get Paxton out or move Paxton in some way, shape, or form. And I would assume at that point, Cornyn's odds shot way up, right? Now, I mean, hold on. I can actually pull up. I was actually but I can pull up the Poly market.
It's funny. Blake, I was on the which party will win the U.S. Senate on Kalshi just to see what's been moving this month, because it had gotten Poly market had flipped, but Kalshi had never flipped. It always kept the Republicans ahead, and it's actually been pretty consistent for the last for most of the month. It had gotten down to basically 50-50, 51-49, but they're at 53-47, and it hasn't really budged.
Yeah.
Even with Trump's endorsement. I mean, a week ago it was at 53-47, right?
Yeah.
So it hadn't really moved. And that's what I would expect to move more after this rather than anything inside of Texas.
You're saying you think the overall to move more after this?
I expect the overall because of the money suck that Paxton becomes, right? If you're really looking at this, you're like, well, are Republicans really favored to hold the Senate now that they've got this money suck?
Right.
And this that they're just got to pour money.
Well, that's like a $25 million thing, right, Chuck?
25?
Probably minimum.
I
50?
think it's a $250 million super PAC. It's Texas, man.
Yeah,
this is Texas.
Yeah, 250.
How many media markets are there in Texas? Like, I know Florida's like.
Houston.
If you
and
count
Dallas
like every
two of the
small
most
metered market, it might be in the 40s.
Yeah,
like something.
So
like Florida has 28 by that definition.
It's not even that, Blake. It is a lot, but it's also just that the ones that are there are expensive as hell. Like Dallas and Houston. San Antonio is a little less, but Dallas and Houston, I mean, it's not New York and LA, but it's pretty damn close.
Yeah. So here's what's so remarkable about this race, talking about the Cornyn Paxton one to me. I'll date myself here, but 20 years ago this month, I moved to one of those small towns in Texas to get my first ever TV job, Wichita Falls, which is on the Texas-Oklahoma border. So,
totally.
And at the time,
you have to do a little Arkansas politics in there too. Sometimes, right?
There it is.
Yeah.
Wichita Falls, currently Paxton 62.
So what is it there? Let me
62-38.
Okay. So kind of mirroring, right?
Yep.
But I mean, that was 20 years, and Cornyn was there, right? 20 years ago. And you think about sort of Texas politics back then, like, George Bush, the ultimate Texan, was president. I mean, I'm not sure if you guys have, but think about like Chip Roy, right? Like Chip Roy is the conservative Republican that you would like identify as sort of Texas Republican politics. And correct me if I'm wrong, but he's on the edge, right?
Yeah,
right
57-43. Yeah,
again,
with 55% in. Doesn't look great.
Yeah. And so if you think about just like how things, and I know 20 years is a long time, and I'm just dating this to my timeline, but I mean, just the way things have changed there.
Look, Dan Patrick and Ken Paxton. Guess who was AG when he first ran for the U.S. Senate?
John Cornyn.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. You can watch these offices, right? When John Cornyn was AG, there was a Democratic lieutenant governor.
Yep.
Still, I believe.
Bob Bullock, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When he first ran. So
George W. Bush's best friend in the legislature.
I mean, the state has everything right now. You got Dan Patrick, Ken Paxton,
It's so different, right?
Greg Abbott. It's a different wing of the party.
Even the guy who's beating Chip Roy Mays in the primary, he's totally just running as like I'll do what Donald Trump says. Do you know what I mean? Like by the way, I'm getting some questions very quickly. I just want to cover this. I'm getting some questions in my YouTube chat about people saying, what are the red counties for Cornyn? Like, where is he
Which
winning?
ones are they?
I mean, look at, Panola, there's 1,000 votes there, right? Half in. So you figure it's going to be about 2,000 votes there. Dallas, I mean, we talked about this, but this is a big problem, obviously, for Cornyn, right, Chuck? 51-49. Gotta win bigger than that.
I just look at Tarrant, and I'm still just like,
yeah.
What happened?
Yeah, totally, 100%. Yeah, it's and like Victoria, there's 600 votes. Now there'll be more, but none of these are big. For people who are wondering, none of these are big places. Dallas obviously is the big one, but he's winning 51-49. He's not winning, he's not winning 70-30. Blake, what do you make of? It's funny. Chuck and I did our podcast today, and Chuck said he wasn't surprised. He was surprised that Trump decided to endorse, but not surprised that he decided to endorse Paxton. And I guess I was dumb enough to think that maybe Trump would be like, to Chuck's point, however much it's going to cost, it's going to be in the millions, and it's probably going to be in the tens minimum and probably hundreds of millions. I would think he'd be like, you know what? I'm just going to endorse Cornyn. It's fine. Like, who cares? But were you, because that was a week ago. It feels like a month ago, but that was a week ago. Did that surprise you? And what did it tell you about Trump?
It did. It surprised me. I did not think he was going to jump into this one.
You just thought he'd stay out entirely.
I thought he'd stay out. Yeah. I thought he was going to stay out. Did he get a slew of polls that show that this was trending this way and he might as well jump on and jump on the bandwagon? I don't know. Maybe that's possible. Was it surprising that he went to Paxton? No, but to be honest, was surprised that he endorsed. I did not think that he was going to get involved in this. And as sort of, remember there were like a couple times where he was like, I'm going to.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Or I don't know if the words were I'm going to, but the suggestion was that there would be news that he was going to do it. And then it never really came. And that, to be honest, sort of increased my, I don't think he's going to do it.
Well, totally. And then by doing it, there's no upside for him. When he chose to do it was pretty much the only loser was him, because you're now creating an impossible situation with Cornyn now in the Senate.
I think that's
for 6 months
story.
That totally jams your agenda. And, I mean, you just created, I don't think he fully appreciated all the bitterness that the back-to-back notion of gutting Cassidy and Cornyn, like Cassidy, the conference would be like, well, he did vote to convict, right?
Do you think Cornyn goes full?
I don't know that Cornyn goes full YOLO.
Yeah, we were
I don't
debating
buy that.
Yeah.
I think he's too much of an institutionalist to do it. Like, I don't think he goes like Tom Tillis. Maybe rhetorically he moves there, but votes wise, what do you think, Blake?
It was interesting. He was on the Hill Sunday with our buddy Chris Steyerwalt, and Chris asked him a version of this question. And he didn't say yes, he didn't say no, which, as you know, is leaving that door open. So I don't know. Like, I don't know what John Cornyn, assuming, this gets called and he loses and all that. I don't know what he's going to do, but he certainly didn't shut the door. And I guess everything that, Tom Tillis sort of led the way on this, right?
Yep.
And that is one side of the spectrum. Does he go full Tillis? I doubt it, to use your word, sort of institutionalist. But look, in that answer he gave Chris, it wasn't a firm no, so I don't know. Yeah,
he could have said, like, I'm a Republican. I mean, I will say I saw a quote today where somebody asked him, will you endorse Paxton if he beats you? And he said, I will support the ticket.
He said Republican ticket. I was on CNN when Manu,
I will support the Republican ticket.
He said I said I would support the Republican ticket.
So I guess that amounts to
what's that support? Is that going out and saying, like, don't believe all those ads, or is that walking into a voting booth and punching his ticket and saying, I think it's that.
Well, he by the way, before he said that, went off just, this is a crook, this is a horrible
totally
person,
unelectable,
yada yada yada.
Right.
I mean, you could just picture Tallarico's consultants going, okay, don't take our word for it.
Right.
Here's what Republican Senator John, the guy that's in the Senate now, here's what he said about Ken Paxton.
And that's what they need, right?
Now, I don't know whether it works or not.
Those are the votes Tallarico needs to win.
I will throw one question, sort of like, when does Paxton become Graham Plattner? Meaning you get so much Teflon, nothing sticks at some point.
It's a very good question. Because he is, look, just as a quick reminder on Paxton, he paid $3 million to his former aides to settle a corruption settlement. He was impeached by the Texas Republican State House, which is not full of a bunch of moderates. His wife, who is in the state Senate, posted on Twitter that they were getting a divorce because Ken Paxton had broken the biblical vows of marriage. And here we are, and I think I don't want to over or underplay it, but I will note there is more than half of the vote in. Ken Paxton is winning by 26 points. It's not particularly close at the moment. Now, there's plenty of vote out, all those things. But again, I do wonder, Blake, what do you make of that? Like, you get to like Graham Plattner, Donald Trump territory where it's the shoot someone in the middle of Fifth Avenue line.
I was just about to say it's 8:45 on the dot, and at that note, I got to bounce.
Okay, there you go. Go do your thing.
Hey, but listen, but guys, I appreciate you. It's been fun. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, dude.
All right, see you guys.
Of course. So I do wonder about though, Chuck, like that margin. I mean, he's up 57,
Power of
29.
Trump.
I mean, he's up almost 90,000 votes.
I think we can't, it's impossible to recreate a world that Trump doesn't endorse in, right? But without Trump's endorsement, this is probably a closer race.
It's a closer race, but don't you think Paxton, given what we know now, Paxton wins, right?
Probably.
Yeah.
But it's probably a closer race. There's no way anybody had a poll showing 62-37.
Oh, hell no.
I think Trump's endorsement, probably ended enthusiasm for Cornyn. I mean, it just takes the wind out of the sails, especially at this moment where, people pay a little bit more attention to politics and the zeitgeist of what's happening. Oh, this is going to be a blowout. Oh, this isn't going to be competitive anymore. I actually do think people pick up on this now.
Yeah.
Particularly if you were thinking about voting in a runoff, you're paying a little bit more attention because you happen to know there's a runoff.
Yeah. No, yeah, totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
Let's bring in Armin Thomas of Split Ticket, I believe. Hey, man.
He had a poll that had you of course, Armin had a poll that showed this 62-37, didn't you?
Maybe. I mean, what we're seeing is, I think, defying the vast majority of expectations that most people had about this race, right? Most people thought that it was going to be close because runoffs tend to have higher propensity turnouts, and people think higher propensity equals more moderate. But again, this is what happens when everybody pays attention to Democratic politics, because on the Democratic side, that unambiguously tends to be true. Mm-hmm. Whereas on the Republican side, higher propensity in Texas means you get the really, really plugged in people. And if you've seen the discourse among Twitter Republicans from Texas, they have hated John Cornyn for a while now. For months. You're
totally right. It is remarkable the level of distrust. I wonder, Armin, what does it go back to? Does it go further? I know we trace it back to him saying in 2023, I think Trump's done and the party needs to move on. But remember, he was involved in the bipartisan gun legislation. What do we know?
Isn't it guns and immigration, right?
Yeah.
I think he really pissed off the base on both those issues.
And it's interesting you say that, because if you look at the down ballot race for railroad commissioner as well, that's another instance of the establishment versus far right proxy war. And Beau French, who
I just pulled it up.
Beau French, who called Jim Wright, his opponent, Jihadi Jim, because he wants to institute Sharia law in Texas, however one does that. If you look at the counties where he's doing the best, those are in those exurban, dark MAGA counties, right? Especially around Dallas, especially around Houston.
Right in here. Right?
And so those areas, right, and French is in all likelihood probably going to win. Cornyn is definitely being targeted with the same brush as all of those quote unquote establishment Republicans, right? Those are dictator margins coming out of those Houston areas.
Yeah.
Kim Jong-un shooting an 18 on 18 holes. Scaly, you want to jump in? Welcome back.
Yeah, no, I think I think Armin was hitting the nail on the head there. I mean, you see Cornyn just struggling in an environment where it's lower turnout, probably a more conservative electorate relative to what we saw in the higher profile March 3rd primary, where you had more races, more attention. You also had the Democratic race that was garnering a lot of notice, and there may have even been some Republican voters who noticed the Democrats had this stuff going on and didn't like the candidates, and so they were like, well, maybe make sure to vote in the primary on the Republican side. And then clearly a lot of people did not show up who voted in that first round because,
holy cow. Scaly, when you were off, we were just talking about, and Armin, you guys look at this stuff really closely. Does this mean that when we look at this margin, it's 63-37 right now. I know 55% in, but does this mean that this was always going to be Paxton?
Yes. I could have told you 3 months ago in a runoff, I would have picked Paxton to win by at least 10. Even if Trump endorsed Cornyn, I think Paxton would still win, right? If you remember in 2024,
that would have been interesting, though.
You mean right? Last Tuesday, Trump endorses Cornyn. These numbers suggest you think Paxton wins. Go ahead. We interrupted you. Go.
Yeah, right. So in 2024, I don't know if you were following in Texas, but there was a very public fight about public school funding versus school vouchers. And Trump made a big movement to primary basically all of the pro-public school.
Well, Abbott did. This is the Abbott primary.
Abbott,
right?
yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
And that included the State House Speaker, Dade Phelan. And Trump endorsed the guy against Dade Phelan. And Dade Phelan still pulled it out anyway in a very, very Trumpy part of the state, right? And so I tell people,
go through a runoff, though, didn't he?
I think it did. And
I remember him.
I think it did.
And him surviving the runoff was a bit of a surprise, actually.
And so what I've told people, right, is that Texas is not necessarily a state like Ohio or Florida or one of those places where Trump has completely remade the GOP's brand of anti-establishment far-right Aryanism, right? Like Texas has been doing this whole right-wing insurgent thing for years now, right? Going all the way back to the Tea Party. And, you know, sometimes that maps onto Trump versus anti-Trump, but in this particular case, it does not necessarily do that.
Well, this is the same, this is the same state that produced this odd, what was it, 2 cycles ago that the state house was a joint cross-partisan majority between Democrats and basically urban Republicans.
Yeah. Yeah, the legislative politics in Texas are very, very, very interesting.
You could argue it's a 3-party state at the moment, right?
Yeah.
With the largest party being this sort of anti-establishment populist right. Is that
you're
fair?
definitely seeing some of that playing out similarly to other really solid red states like West Virginia and Idaho and, even Utah as well, where you have the establishment Republicans and then your 3% militia out there types. Yeah.
This one it's the out there types have a little more traction in Texas.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
It is remarkable. Chuck and I, as the oldsters on this, I will note, I remember, Cornyn in 2002, it was like, he's the conservatives conservative. Now, I know it was 20 years ago, but it does speak to, Armin makes such a good point. It's like Twitter isn't real life, but I do look at it and I was unbelievable. Anytime I tweeted about the Texas Senate race, there would just be like 50 people being like, Cornyn's a rhino, we need to get rid of him. It's like, it's a very interesting, like that progression is fascinating to me. Because if you told me John Cornyn's going to lose a primary, I'd be like, how?
Look, they're playing with fire near propane. Okay. At some point, going this far to the right is going to produce a Democratic victory.
It may be.
I don't know if
it's
it's
November,
this time.
Chuck.
Right. I don't know if it's this time. I think they're look, I think this governor's race is going to be under 5 points.
I honestly think, Gina Hinojosa is a solid candidate and she's going to be carried by Tallarico. But I don't think Abbott is the suburban juggernaut that everybody thinks he is.
I agree. I think people are pissed at him. I also think people are pissed at him over this education stuff. I think this voucher thing is he owned it and it's not popular. It's polarizing.
Well, and he's been in, like, we know this, right? The longer you're in, people who go for 3 and 4 terms, man, it doesn't end well. Armin, can I ask you about the general real quick?
Yeah.
Does this showing by Paxton change anything, up, down, or indifferent about what you think of Tallarico versus Paxton in a general?
Well, I think it shows that Paxton has a very dedicated base of supporters who would basically follow him off a cliff if he told them to. In terms of independence in the general, I know that on the Republican side, there are a lot of people who have said it's 32 years, it's Texas, there's no way this can happen, so we're just going to go all in on the rhino thing, right? Like that's happened. But, and I'm going to be dating myself, when I was 10 or 11, Scott Brown got elected to the Senate in my home state of Massachusetts.
Same right? for Chuck and I. Yeah. 10 or 11.
I remember my parents at the time talking about how unthinkable that was at the beginning because of, campaigns produce weird things, right? And eventually, heuristics work for judging elections until they don't.
So it's funny you say that because this has been my issue with Paxton. And the reason why I was not I was pretty confident Paxton was going to run this runoff, but you're like, he's not running a good race. His messaging's not great.
Underfunded.
Right. He's underfunded. Right.
Well, his messaging is great for Republicans, to be very clear.
For the certain flavor of Republicans.
Yeah, for the MAGA runoff tier
Yes.
Republicans, it's catnip. But for everybody else, right, this is the same problem that the Republicans ran into in Pennsylvania with Doug Mastriano, and in Georgia with Herschel Walker, and in Arizona with Blake Masters. And there is no reason, right, that Texas is a state, everyone thinks it's R+30 or whatever because we're indexing to political priors from 20 years ago when George Bush was around, right? Texas is not the same state. And especially when the national environment is getting bluer, if Laksha and I did the math, you only need a candidate who's about 6-7 points worse than average to lose the state. And Ted Cruz was about that bad in 2018 and 2024, and Paxton is as bad or worse than Cruz, right? In every election he's been on the ballot recently, he's the worst performing Republican.
Interesting. Yep. I just wonder. It's like he is winning among the people. These people are always going to be for Paxton. They're going to be for him in the general election too. The question is, are there enough of him, right? And
so I've been trying to find, people. I've been looking to see, like, when was this race over?
Oh, right. I have an idea, but you go first. So, I have an idea.
So, look, I've got somebody who told me there was polling before Trump endorsed showing Paxton up double digits, and that this thing has been over
polls
for
that came out before
quite some time.
Before Trump endorsed that did have him up about 10.
Can I suggest?
But I was just going to say most of the publics though had it pretty tight, much tighter. But I don't think any of the public pollsters know how to model runoffs.
That's the Armin's
not.
point.
I'm not going to tell
it's like,
and I'm not going to hold it against them.
No, it's based on
but
old
I don't
numbers.
I'm always skeptical of runoff polls when I see them released publicly.
Can I tell you when I think Paxton won it? Right after the primary, when he said, "I'll drop out of the race if the Save America." It's utterly brilliant, right? Because the Save America Act was not going to pass. Like, it's brilliant, but it presents him as idealistic and committed to the cause, and Cornyn as this rhino. You know what I mean? Like, he's not even willing to. He's not even willing to do a talking filibuster. It's whoever thought of it.
I mean, he got Cornyn to say, "Sure, I would back Senate rule changes that would allow us to back." But at that point, you're playing Paxton's game,
Totally.
And
it's like, well, why haven't you done it before?
Here's the question I have: is it's funny. I think we all have assumed that this general election was going to be a referendum on Paxton. I wonder if that's been decided. The question is, it's going to be a referendum. Is Tallarico normal enough to represent Texas? Is that what this is going to be a referendum on?
I mean, it's very possible, right? So very critical mass of Republicans do not like Ken Paxton, right? Like, that much is obvious.
We know this is true.
Things. However, they're going to save themselves the shame and embarrassment of publicly backing a Democrat who they think is vegan or whatever, right? And who thinks God is non-binary and has 6 genders. So most people will either shut up about it and just quietly support Paxton, or they will, basically forget every negative thing that they've said about Paxton in the past before.
Or they'll skip it. I don't think they vote for Tallarico, though. I think
I don't necessarily think they would do that. Mm-hmm. But, Paxton, right, Texas voted for Trump by 14 points, right? If you assume that he is about as bad as Mark Robinson was in North Carolina, right, which is, I think, the upper bound of where that kind of candidate quality gap can be, Robinson did about 15 points worse than Trump did, right?
I see where you're going.
That kind of candidate
still puts it a heads-up race, right? Still makes
it's very close.
On its own, give you a toss-up race, regardless of how Tallarico does or whatever. And I'm sure he's a smart enough guy to know that he's going to have to apologize for some of the more liberal things that he has said in the past and whatnot. But that's campaign stuff that they can figure out. But the point is that this is evidently a competitive race for the Republicans that did not need to be a competitive one, but for the endorsement of Trump.
Totally right.
And we could have our first $1 billion Senate race.
Yep.
It's 9 o'clock. I know what that means. Mr. Skelly, you want to do the honors?
Eastern, and we are in a position now to project that Ken Paxton will win the Republican primary runoff in Texas over John Cornyn. I zoomed in to Travis County here.
Yeah, it's like extra cruel and unusual. You're going to show the one place he can
it's
win.
It's like the one place that Cornyn is winning with majority that has a lot of votes, or with a clear, like a large majority, or at least, not a few tenths of a point. But yes, Paxton up 62% to 38% right now. This is a drubbing, I think, is the best way to sum it up.
Yeah, Armin Thomas, that's the part of this is, could you have projected this massive victory?
I would have, if you asked me beforehand, I would have said Paxton's going to win by 12, but not 25.
Yeah. Totally. I totally agree. All right. Hey, I'm getting a lot of people on my YouTube asking where they can follow Armin. That's easy. Split Ticket.
He was fantastic.
Great Substack. Go check it out. Really smart. We've had Laksha Jain on as well. Really smart analysis there. Armin, thank you.
We've loved it.
Thank you so
Great
much.
to have you, Armin.
Of course, man. Be well.
Thanks, Armin.
It is amazing. Skelly, now that you're here, I can ask this because I didn't know before. We got 60% in. I mean, is there a world where this gets closer, or are we legit talking about an incumbent senator losing a runoff by 25 points?
I mean, I don't think it's going to get closer.
Okay.
We know
that Paxton is one. Paxton is one. I'm just asking about margin.
Oh, sure. No. I know. I'm agreeing with you. I think, the problem is as we get some of these election day votes in, I have to imagine those would even be friendlier to Paxton. So who's to say that this isn't going to get closer to 30 by the time we get a little bit more in?
Wow. Well, let's this is actually a good time to sneak in a break. So let's sneak in a break. That's right. We've got some advertising brought to you by Ethos. Brought to you by Ethos. And what Ethos does is it helps you find life insurance. Let me tell you why life insurance bailed me out. My father died when I was 16. We didn't have a lot of money when it happened, and we were in a pretty tough financial spot after it happened. I'm an only child. Suddenly my mother's single, and we were struggling. And, my dad didn't leave us in the best financial situation, but he did make one purchase. He bought a life insurance policy. Wasn't a huge chunk of change. Okay. But it was enough when we found it. And when I say we found it, meaning we went through his desk and we found, oh, look at this. Let's see if there's anything here. And it helped us out at a time that we really needed it. And that's why I think it's important that if you can, especially if you have young children, if you can get life insurance, you should get it. So what does Ethos do? Well, Ethos makes getting life insurance fast and easy, and it's 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, you can apply in minutes, and you can get same-day coverage. They will find you the right fit. There's no medical exam. You just answer a few simple health questions online. You can get up to $3 million in coverage, and some policies are as low as $30 a month. And you'll get your lowest rate from their network of trusted carriers. So take 10 minutes to get covered today with life insurance through Ethos. Get your free quote at ethos.com/Chuck. That's right. That is ethos.com/Chuck. Application times may vary and rates may vary. There you go. I tossed to myself.
Todd.
There you go. I should have double checked that I was tossing myself and at least let you know I was tossing to myself. The good news is I was watching to see, do we lose viewers or do we gain viewers during advertisement? We didn't lose viewers. So that's
Chuck,
good.
that was you throwing to yourself was like Trump negotiating a deal with himself and the IRS.
Right, but he'd never do something like that. Speaking of negotiating with a former position that I used to hold, let's bring in my friend and your friend, Kirk Beto, the editor-in-chief of the
Hey.
There he is.
Hey, guys. Just in time.
Well, we were talking about the drubbing. I don't think anybody had a 25 to 30 point blowout. I mean, this is like watching the Knicks close out a series these days.
Golly. How about a trigger warning there, Chuck, for the poor Cavs fans? Jeez. Sorry, Kirk, go ahead.
You trade for James Harden,
you're
going
talking
to
about
get
this while Game 5's going on right now between the Spurs and the Thunder. The real competitive battle for Texas right now going on in KC. This is just an absolute drubbing. This is Assad numbers here. These are just incredible. And the whole time I'm thinking,
second dictator
Yes, by the way,
Reference of
Armin said dictator-like performance. Yes.
Yeah, we're just continuing that. I'm thinking right now about, when I was putting out the feelers earlier today, I put it at about over under 5.5. And this is why I'm not running sports books here. This is ridiculous. But I am thinking a lot about the headquarters of SLF and the NRSC tonight and how they are going to try to square this, this candidate here. I was looking at the statements that the NRSC put out.
They're a greatest hits. Yeah. Why don't you read some of them? I got one
pulled up right here. And
Please do.
This is right after Paxton jumped into the race, after the divorce became public. And this is on NRSC letterhead in July of last year. What Ken Paxton has put his family through is truly repulsive and disgusting. No one should have to endure what Angela Paxton has. We pray for her as she chooses to stand up for herself and her family during this difficult time. Paxton refused to disclose multiple out-of-state properties in 2023 financial disclosures. Paxton was indicted on securities fraud and charges. This is all from the official GOP campaign arm that is now going to have to get him over the line here.
Woo!
Wow,
that is brutal.
Jeffrey
in
Skelly,
more ways than one, because they're going to have to spend money on his behalf.
Yeah, I don't think
Senate Leadership Fund, but they're going to have to fund a lot of it because he's not going to raise a ton based on how he's raised money so far.
Right.
He is not.
But
Chuck
if
made
you're
that
this
point, he's a bad fundraiser.
He raised $1.7 million during the first 3 months of 2026. At the same time, James Tallarico raised $27.5 million.
27x.
Jeffrey Skelly, do you think we will see SLF spend $1 on a positive spot about Ken Paxton, or every single dollar will be about James Tallarico?
Oh, it's going to be all about Tallarico. And I think actually to that point, as we were just about to project this race for Paxton, the NRSC did release a statement, and they said a state President Trump won by nearly 14 points isn't going to elect James Tallarico, a radical leftist who thinks God is non-binary and that Texas should be a welcome mat for illegals.
Right.
He is the most dangerous flank of the far left. Texas isn't swapping brisket for open borders. So yes, it's going to be all about Tallarico all the time, which, that's easier for them in some ways than trying to walk back any of the things they said about Ken Paxton.
And to that point, and Kirk, I'm interested in this. We played. Actually, can we play that one more time, that Tallarico thing, Lauren, that Paxton put up? Kirk, I'm sure you've seen this, but for people who are just tuning in, number one, DDHQ is called Texas for Ken Paxton. Mm-hmm. He will be the nominee against James Tallarico. This is something he ran. Lauren, can we pop that up on screen?
The Democrats have a weird candidate.
God is non-binary. There are many more than two biological sexes. In fact, there are 6. It is now existential that we try to reduce our meat consumption. The American flag is such a complicated symbol for most of us. Prophetic voices like Jesus have helped me reckon with my own whiteness, my own masculinity. Our southern border should be like our front porch. There should be a giant welcome mat out front. No need to sit and cry over, your whiteness or your masculinity. They're going to call me a radical leftist.
Something that you love that's not family or friends.
I love, I'm just saying this because it's on my mind, the trans children.
The Democrats have a weird candidate.
Low T Tallarico. Too weak for Texas. Lone Star Liberty PAC is responsible for the content of this ad.
I know
That
I'm not
is brutal.
I know it's a brutal ad, but I actually think it loses steam by adding the low T Tallarico.
Yeah, I agree, because it comes out of nowhere.
It comes
Just
out of
finish with
nowhere.
Trump saying it's weird,
right? Like,
finish with that.
End with there, like, and this is the only. You could also picture how they blow this race. They throw so much at it where it starts to bounce off Tallarico because it becomes ridiculous. And like, you actually have a really good spot there. The low T takes away from it.
It's stupid.
Yeah,
I agree.
It's sort of like,
but
well, is he weak or is he weird?
But Kirk,
I wouldn't do both.
I guess I only wanted to run that again because Chuck is right. There are too many messages without question. But my point only from that is there's a fair amount of raw material there of James Tallarico talking on camera where you could paint him as sort of this pinko leftist, trans commie. What do you make of Chuck made the point, I don't know if you were listening. He said, we assume that this general would be a referendum on Paxton, which this is really thoughtful, I think. But what if it's a referendum on Tallarico? And is he too weird, to use Tim Walz and Donald Trump? Like, what do you make of that? Because that's a lot in Texas. Like, I know my in-laws who probably are not Ken Paxton people. They're not going to love anything that Tallarico said in that ad.
Right. And I think the most effective part of that ad is using his own words against him here. And like a lot of things that Chuck says, I'm jealous that I didn't come up with them first. That this is going to be a referendum on Tallarico rather than Paxton. I think that's right. I think what's really interesting to see is, we're talking about, does SLF, the Republican aligned super PAC, put money in supporting Paxton instead of just going after Tallarico? I'm really interested to see what the Democratic national investment is going to be in Texas now that this is official. Like, what does SMP do? What does the DSCC do? Are their dollars better spent in Grand Platner in Maine as opposed to Tallarico? Obviously,
Iowa, Alaska, a lot cheaper.
Correct.
So if you recall,
you could do both of those easily.
If you recall,
Iowa and Alaska for the price of Texas easily.
Well, if you recall, in 22, so I think it was in 22, Schumer did a head fake with Florida, and SMP didn't spend any money in Florida, and he just, and left it alone. I mean, I will say this, they have shown SMP has shown sort of a cold-blooded look at this. I don't expect them to spend any money. I think Tallarico I think that's his own project, and I think
he may be self-sufficient given the amount he's raising and the amount of attention he's going to get.
That's what I'm saying here. Is that,
it could be Amy McGrath meets. Remember, Beto didn't get any money from the SMP back in.
Jamie Harris. Like, here's the thing: if raising money wins you elections, Jamie Harrison would be in the U.S. Senate from South Carolina, right? I mean, that's
Amy
the
McGrath
issue. Is Tallarico that again?
Amy McGrath from Kentucky.
Amy McGrath
would be running for a second term. Right?
Second term.
Instead of losing a House primary that we covered last week on the live stream. Kirk, go ahead.
I think beyond just the money that the National Republican apparatus is going to have to spend in here, I think the biggest story here is how many House seats this potentially puts on the board, how many state legislative seats this puts on the board here. I know we're watching Texas 35 tonight. That's kind of the on the bubble seat, the San Antonio based seat there, where a Paxton nomination could put that very squarely in play here, even after Republicans tried to redraw that in their favor. So I'm looking at
I'm so glad you brought the trickle down effect. We've been talking about the impact on, say, John Sununu's campaign in New Hampshire, Michael Watley's campaign in North Carolina, Mike Collins, who's
which are real,
right? But the trickle down effect on House races, right? So not only will this cost more money for SLF, but this costs more money for the House Republican super PAC now on those races.
Hey, just to jump in real quick to your point about the 35th district. Or south of around the San Antonio area, which has got both primaries we're watching tonight. We have a projection. In the 35th.
This is great. This is a great transition here. I'm tossing it to
congratulations.
Good job, Kirk. We're professional.
Yeah. So on the Democratic side, we have a projection. Johnny Garcia will defeat Maureen Galindo.
That'd have been a nightmare.
Yes.
Democrats breathe a sigh of relief.
So for Democrats, yes, Galindo, if you missed this earlier, we were talking about her for a little bit. She made a number of extremely controversial and anti-Semitic comments regarding Israel, the influence of Jews, a lot of things that are sort of, we've heard these before, kinds of
not in the original German. I mean,
exactly.
I'm sorry. Like, that's the one time that phrase really works.
Totally right.
Yeah.
So Democrats pretty much unified, like Democratic Party, machinery and groups and whatnot, all rallied to Garcia, who is running as a blue dog. He's running as a moderate. Galindo running much more as an out and out progressive. But you had figures like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez coming in and endorsing Garcia in the aftermath of Galindo's comments. So I think Democrats are feeling like, well, we avoided one there.
Oh, and obviously Johnny Garcia is their best chance to flip that seat. But as the night progresses, I don't know how you guys are projecting the Republican race there, but it's interesting there where Donald Trump endorsed Carlos de la Cruz, Greg Abbott endorsed John Lujan, the state legislator there.
Yep.
So I think that's an interesting dynamic. But of the races that are going to have the biggest impact and potentially have the biggest impact on control of the House with just how narrow everything is, with Ken Paxton's nomination, he's going to be dragging down whoever emerges from the Republican primary there, especially now that Johnny Garcia is the Democratic nominee.
Yeah.
I think that's a great point. I mean, that's the thing. We focus so much on the top, and
even on the Senate impact on other
races.
But the in-state impact is huge. Yeah. And look, Abbott has a ton of money, and everybody wondered, is he going to be able to spend it all? Guess what? He's now going to have to spend a lot of it.
100%.
He is going to have to spend a lot of money here. This is going to be, I think, Chuck, to your point, that this is going to be potentially $1 billion Senate race. But the Republicans that I was talking to this week, they were projecting that this Paxton nomination could cost the whole party apparatus writ large anywhere between $400 and $450 million.
That was what I figured
already.
I wonder. That was my guess, is that this is a $500 million mistake by the president.
We wrote about it in Hotline today. Our headline was Trump's, $400 million decision here, and that's what it's going to cost the Republicans.
And by the way, Chuck and I talked about this when it happened, right? And I'm sure you did too, Kirk. It's not based. It's if you ever need proof that it is not about the Republican Party, it is about Donald Trump first, second, and third. $400 million should be proof enough. Anyway, that's Kirk Beto, editor-in-chief of the Hotline.
Let you go.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, guys. Right. Good luck tonight.
See you, Kurt.
Chuck, I'm going to fiddle a little with results here while Skelly's gone.
Man.
Why don't you, go ahead, bring in JMC.
Let's bring in JMC, John Kuvalian. I'm always butchering his last name, Kuvalian.
Yeah.
How'd I do this time, John?
I'll give you a B. How's that? It's Kuvion.
Yeah, Kuvion.
B is good for us in school, John.
Chris, I give out grades. Let's just say students don't handle B's very well.
No. Okay, that's a whole other thing, but I will
I'm
tell
not
you
going there.
A very quick story. I taught at Georgetown. A kid turned.
We lost John.
A kid turned to pass fail, Chuck, who was getting a B+ in the class.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Anyway, hopefully John will come back. I'm just going to pull up a quick few things here. Like, I want to
let's pop him back in.
Try that again.
Hey,
we're back. That's all right.
You have to admit that's unique that my mispronunciation of my name would cause the internet to freeze.
I know.
There you go.
Hey, I just wanted to note, John, I wanted to note just real quick, because we haven't noted this yet in this space, that Mays Middleton, who is a state rep, has beaten Chip Roy for Attorney General there pretty convincingly. Chip Roy, made waves in Washington, but comes up pretty well short here. Middleton is both from a very wealthy oil and gas family, spent like $17 million of his own of his family's money, and led in the primary. So not a huge shock, but that's a member of Congress who's going to lose. You guys go ahead.
No,
Chuck, just tell me if there's something you want me to highlight.
Look, the thing that we're just, nobody's surprised that Paxton won this. Nobody had 25 points to maybe 30 by the time everything is said and done.
Right.
This was, and, we've been noodling around. I mean, Paxton's had this lead for some time, but I don't think anybody saw this coming.
Well, the thing about it that was interesting was about a year ago, I was figuring that my own Senator Bill Cassidy and John Cornyn were going to be the two most endangered Republican incumbents of those running for re-election. And a couple of similarities I saw between the two, and I'm not talking about the impeachment vote, but with Bill Cassidy, one of the things I was noticing from my polls going all the way back a year ago, he kind of hovered around 25% the whole time, but I never saw him improve. And whenever I see an incumbent that far down, that's basically rigor mortis. Now, how does that apply to John Cornyn? Well, when you're talking about a Senate incumbent who's been there for more than 2 decades, and the best he could do is break even in the low 40s on primary day, that's, in other words, where's he going to get the extra votes to get to 50%? Particularly when you're talking about a race over the Memorial Day weekend, essentially, where only the most committed are going to be voting anyway, and that augurs well for Paxton as opposed to Cornyn.
No, look,
Absolutely.
it all was pointing there, but it almost gets to, was this race ever winnable? And
Yeah.
was Cornyn, did he actually do his party a disservice by running and create, you might have actually prevented this Paxton scenario with a wider open race?
In fact, I think that's a debate question worth asking, because it seems nowadays, and I would say this is going all the way back to 2010, incumbency is almost viewed as a liability now in Republican primary
Yeah.
land. Whereas the longer and longer you're there, it's almost like voters have less and less respect for you on the Republican side. And so I think that was strike one, strike two, and strike 2.5 for John Cornyn was just his lengthy incumbency.
Yeah. And by the way, Chuck's been on this for a while. I also, to your point, John, I do think once you see, just talking about Greg Abbott, like, look, I think Greg Abbott is the favorite. At the same time, Gina Hinojosa is a real candidate, will be helped by Tallarico. That whole campaign is going to be well-funded. Abbott is going to have to deal with whatever drag exists from Paxton in terms of underperformance. And he's just been in office a long time because Texas does not term limit its governors.
Right. And, that's the kind of thing where when you have that kind of dynamic going on, which is one very long-serving governor who just so happened to be an attorney general, and I think he was on the Supreme Court before that.
Oh, right. He's been on the public
been in politics forever.
Yeah. You're basically talking about a generational elected official. And so I'm of the opinion that the Senate and governor's races probably won't be more than a few points apart either way.
I agree.
Interesting.
Because whatever strength Abbott may have with regards to incumbency and money, the Democrats are going to be energized, and that indirectly helps Hinojosa.
Yep.
So we've been toying with this, is that, look, the assumption with Paxton, the assumption was, well, geez, if this is a referendum on Paxton, it's an unwinnable race. But is it going to be a referendum on Paxton, or is it going to be a referendum on Tallarico if we're talking about the size of money we're going to see spent?
Right.
I mean, Tallarico's going to have to spend money on Tallarico. We know the Senate Republicans are not going to spend money promoting Paxton. That might be an unfixable brand.
Yeah.
But it's the Tallarico brand that's fluid.
And what's an interesting point you're bringing up now, and what you brought when Armin was on a couple segments ago, it is true that Paxton is, relatively speaking, the weak read in the Republican delegation, but the crucial difference between his previous races and this year's race, now he's bumped up to the national stage, whereas before he was running in the context of Texas elections. Mm-hmm. So that benefits him some. Of course, now you have a crosswind of Democrats are unusually energized, as evidenced by their getting a majority of the primary vote in Georgia and Texas. But I do think that Paxton running on a national stage is a net benefit to him, as opposed to if he were running for attorney general again.
Can he get those? I had somebody ask me this on the CNN said earlier today. Is Paxton the type of candidate that can get the Trump voter out in a non-Trump year?
I think he can, because when you're talking about a midterm election, you're not talking about 20 to 25% turnout. You're talking more about 50% turnout. I think the bigger issue for Paxton, and by the way, I'll give you a historical analogy here, Clayton Williams versus Ann Richards back in 1990, where you had a Republican. Now, in the case of Clayton Williams, he started off far ahead, and he managed to blow his lead. This time, what you have is there are substantial doubts about whether Paxton can get across the finish line, but a 63%, and that's probably going to climb a few more points, but a 63% victory is certainly nothing to sneeze at, number one. And number two, I do think that ultimately it comes down to what will the Bush-type Republicans do? In other words, to what extent will they hold their nose and say they'll vote for Paxton, or I'll vote the Republican ticket, as the quote that was said a couple segments ago.
Yeah.
That dynamic in places like Williamson and Denton and Collin and Fort Bend and Brazoria, that to me is the ball game right there.
And I just pulled the map here. Obviously you can figure this out. Paxton is yellow, Cornyn is red. That is why the race is over. But I do wonder, John, about, hold on, let me get on the right screen here. Even in like Dallas County, like 51-49 in Travis, which is Austin.
Yeah.
54-46. Like, he's just not winning. The one
He didn't win rank and file Republicans.
Tarrant, here's Tarrant, right? So
this
is Fort Worth,
right? Like that means
59-41. Yeah,
Paxton just didn't win MAGA. He won Mr. and Mrs. Republican.
Paxton, no question. You don't win 63% with winning just the MAGA base, right?
Right.
And actually, an interesting statistic towards what y'all are talking about. When I was looking at the Cornyn vote in the primary versus the runoff, the thing that immediately caught my attention was in 172 counties, and that was 10 minutes ago, but in 172 counties, Cornyn's percentage in the runoff was actually lower than what it was in the primary.
Yeah.
So basically, he got what he was going to get in the primary, number one, and number two, with this being a Memorial Day-esque election, that probably cost Cornyn a couple points.
Well, I'm glad you point what you get what you're going to get, because this is my theory on the Tallarico poll numbers right now. Is that Tallarico's 45 is a very informed 45, and it's not much left for him to get. Versus if you look at those undecideds in the 45-44 matchups, 46-45 matchups with Paxton, that my guess is those folks have a higher view of Donald Trump than the average set of undecided voters.
Yeah.
Yep.
And, what's interesting about that is not just what Tallarico is getting now, but if basically that's a ceiling, kind of like what we saw happen in the J.D. Vance race against Tim Ryan, where
it was always 44-45.
Tim Ryan was starting in the mid to upper 40s. Yeah. That was great in May, but it stayed that way throughout the summer and fall. And so and the other thing too about Tallarico is you figure that everything bad and negative that has been said about Ken Paxton has already been said. But the one thing about Tallarico is now that it's a clear mono-a-mono race, what gimmick will he have relative to what Beto O'Rourke did in 2018? In other words, is he going to go visit all counties? Is he going to do, let's say, work days like Bob Graham used to? In other words, what's his shtick that'll enable him to go above that 45%?
What you're saying is you're saying he needs a shtick.
Very much.
Yeah. And it can't be, and we've talked about this, it can't be the character that tomorrow morning Republicans will begin to make of him, right? Which is this, God has 6 genders, I love trans kids, et cetera, et cetera. Like, he is going to face an absolute wall of advertising, because let's be honest, what's the positive Ken Paxton message, right? Like, where do you go to like make it? They're not going to rehabilitate Ken Paxton. I think they're just going to try to destroy Tallarico, right?
90% destroy Tallarico, although it wouldn't hurt Paxton if, let's pretend, he does some sorrowful ad of him on the front porch talking vaguely of things he's done in his previous life that he's not proud of.
Right. See if he's capable of that.
In other words,
you
not
it. Too Trumpian.
Too Trumpian. October.
Yeah.
Hey, John, while we have you here, I did not prep you for this, and if you don't have the numbers, just say it. But my feeling is South Carolina Republicans today in the state Senate, let's forget the arguments about whether it's right or wrong to have this remap. The real reason to reject this map is it actually it's actually bad for Republicans, not necessarily good for them as far as holding multiple House seats. That's at least my read of this, and I know it's the read of some in South Carolina. I'm just curious what you were watching in those numbers as they were messing around with these maps in South Carolina.
Well, it's funny you mention that, because you have a similar dynamic going on in Louisiana, although in our case, 6-0 is pretty much not going to happen, because the challenge you have in Louisiana, just like what you would in South Carolina, when you have an identifiable Democratic voting bloc that is, say, in the 40 to 45% range, and you have more than several congressmen, the question is, which Republican is going to take on all those Democratic votes?
Right.
Large chunks of Charleston and Columbia and the
They couldn't figure out how to draw districts that were going to somehow make it a 7.
And again, just to John's point, like in a state like Louisiana, the geography of the state matters. Like there are just not ways sometimes to make the lines connect, literally.
Correct. And plus, in our case, not only do we have the geographic constraint, which is, the New Orleans area disproportionately has more of a Democratic feel to it, but the other half of the equation is one of the congressmen representing the New Orleans area is Steve Scalise, who of course is high up the food
Right.
chain.
Yeah,
And the
no one
question
backs that
then
up.
becomes,
Yeah.
would he necessarily want to have to spend, 10, 20, whatever $1 million to defend his seat?
The answer to that, John, is no. We already know that answer.
And that's the risk of when you try to go too far in, this
Now, this
7-0
has been-
or 6-0 type of configuration.
I mean, this is where somebody in the Trump political department needs to read a history of the 1991 reapportionment and understand actually how this was a net positive for the Republican Party, not a net negative. But, yeah.
Mhm.
Anyway,
Hey, JMC, thank you as always.
good to see you, John.
Yep.
We've missed
hey-
you in the last couple live streams. Glad to have you.
Yeah,
back.
love having John.
Glad to be back.
All right, good man.
We'll see you next week, I hope.
I want to note one thing here, and Skelly, thank you for being back. You may want to grab this, but I just before we are going to bring in we hope Gabby Barenbaum from the Texas Tribune, great reporter at a great place. I just want to note while my screen is still being shared, I just want to pull up the Texas Railroad Commissioner race, which is actually very interesting. Now, first of all, the Railroad Commissioner does not oversee the railroad. They oversee the oil and gas industry. They're hugely powerful, hugely powerful. The person who is winning now, this is close, right? Beau French. I think Lauren has some Beau French sound. Let's just play that real quick.
I'm Beau French. You might know me because for the last 2 years, I've been the chairman of the Republican Party in the largest red county in America. I've been the leading elected official in Texas defending our culture against the invasion of radical Islam. And this battle has led me to run for the Texas Railroad Commission. Our state has been reliant on foreign Islamic countries for energy to power our schools and hospitals. This is dangerous. Texas has abundant oil, uranium, lithium, and more, all critical minerals to our mission for Texas energy independence. Texas energy should begin and end in our state, and we should never place our safety in the hands of foreign nationals whose way of life contradicts our own. The Texas miracle is your birthright. My opponent wants to give it away to foreign adversaries for nothing. We need someone who is dedicated to the America First agenda governing this industry. This industry is too critical to our national defense. We need someone who will never back down to radical Islam. And that's why I'm running. Support me for Texas Railroad Commissioner.
All right, so let's bring Gabby in from the Texas Tribune. I just want to read one more Beau French headline. This is from the Texas Tribune. Kayla Guo, I hope I'm saying her name right. Guo. Guo.
Yeah.
Thank you. Beau French spoke at CPAC in March. I'm just going to read you the first paragraph from the Texas Tribune story. Beau French, a Republican candidate for Texas Railroad Commissioner on Friday, said Republicans should more openly embrace Islamophobia and called on the U.S. to deport 100 million people, nearly a third of the country's population. Hi, Gabby.
Hey, I already knew where you were going the minute you said quote from CPAC. Yeah, this is Railroad Commissioner underratedly interesting race here. And the Democratic candidate on the other side, John Rosenthal, is like a pretty normie. He's an engineer, state rep from Houston. And so if Beau French advances, this could, I think, seriously be one to watch, especially if the Senate race is close and if Tallarico's a rising tide that lifts all boats. I would keep an eye on this one for sure.
Well, it's been since 1994 since Democrats have elected anybody statewide to anything, and it was Gary Morrow back at Land Commissioner. Sounds like, Gabby, you think with all the stars are aligning here, there's got to be one statewide race Democrats break through, given that it looks like this board is as playable as they've had it, frankly, since, I guess, 2002.
I mean, I think it's their best shot, certainly since 2018, and maybe all the way back. It's still Texas, right? I mean, I think the Republicans are favored in every race. I think that's important to say. I did see Cook moved their model from likely to lean Republican now that Paxton is in there, so that's meaningful. But I certainly think if you're a Democrat, if you're James Tallarico, like this is probably the ideal outcome that you were hoping for.
Gabby, I'll pull up the Senate election. I just wanted to note, Railroad Commissioner on the Republican side not called yet, but I mean,
it's trending. Look, it's the closest race left.
Yeah, So let me pull up Texas Senate here, Gabby. We've asked everybody this, but you're there, or you're closer to all of this. Are you surprised I mean, this is a technical term. This is a gigantic ass whipping. I mean, it's just there's just no other way to put it. Right? I mean, does that surprise you that it's this big a margin? Did you expect Paxton? If we said 2 days ago Gabby was going to win, what would you have said? And then what do you make of this margin?
I'm definitely a little surprised. I thought he was going to win by like 10. I thought that the early vote looked decent for Cornyn. The fact that there was like strong early vote turnout in the urban counties where Cornyn did well in the primary, I thought maybe that was an indicator that it would, Paxton would still win because of just how runoffs favor the more conservative candidate, that the Hunt voters were going to break for him, the Trump endorsement, et cetera. But I think this is, truly puts it to bed. And this is what I guess I shouldn't have been surprised. This is what Ken Paxton does. This is what he did against George P. Bush in 2022. In that runoff, I mean, runoff electorates are really his bread and butter and made for him. And I think just even the vote shifts in the urban counties, like if you look at, Tarrant, Denton, Dallas, I mean, it's pretty crazy how much it shifted towards Paxton.
Gabby Birnbaum of Texas Tribune, you just sort of hinted at it. This is what Paxton does.
Yeah.
Okay, explain the hold. What is it? Is it the hold that a pastor has over a congregation? Is it something else? What is the connection? He clearly has a connection here.
Yeah.
The voters have said, you know what? This guy may be all the things you say he is, but like the same way that we see this nationally with Trump, you know what? Yeah, you may not like him, but you know what? He's my a-hole, and that's why I like him. I don't like him. You know what I mean? Like there's always been, is that what it is? What is it about? What's the core connection Paxton has that keeps, look, he's now beaten the Bush family and essentially the rest of the establishment wing of the party tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not dissimilar to Trump. I mean, I think Trump sort of made that clear when he endorsed him, that Paxton, he feels like has gotten a raw deal, right? That, Paxton's been under indictment. He was impeached by the Texas House, which, Republican majority, not dissimilar, right? I mean, obviously it was a Democratic majority that impeached Trump, but you can see the parallels there very clearly. He's had legal troubles. He's been accused of, cheating on his wife. So you can see all that. And I think for these, MAGA base voters, they see this as almost like the Republican establishment in Texas that frustrates them, because a lot of these voters, right, they're not worried about Democrats winning. They haven't had to worry about that for a long time. And, in these one-party dominant states, you end up, the tails end up chasing the middle often. And you end up, the biggest, most consequential fights people relish are within the party. And I think for a lot of these voters who are runoff voters who care a lot, Paxton is somebody who sort of embodies all their frustrations with the establishment, and they see him as this fighter. He sues Biden and all that.
So is it just he's been around too long? I mean, one of our last guests said, it's as simple as, these voters love to vote out incumbents. And if you're an incumbent, we want to vote you out.
Yeah, I mean, Cornyn's not the first. He's certainly the biggest, right? I think of this cycle, and in Texas recently, Senator Cornyn, he's been there for a really long time. I mean, some people associate him with the Bush era, which is sort of, increasingly a dirty word in Texas, believe it or not, right?
Amazing.
Yeah, he's not, he doesn't scream and yell. He's, much more quiet, sort of even-keeled, staid guy. He's a behind-the-scenes guy. He's really well-liked in the Senate, right? I mean, his Senate Republican colleagues.
Which accrues not to his benefit, by the way. Right. Being well-liked in the Senate is the worst thing that you could be. Yeah.
I was just going to say that's a negative, but yeah.
Right. And people, I mean, it's not unusual to run against Washington, right? But it feels like especially high-pitched this cycle. And I think for Cornyn, to a lot of people, represents Washington and the establishment and insiders and everything they kind of are frustrated by.
Hey, Gabby, are we underestimating Ken Paxton? It feels like Ken Paxton. I started off the whole live stream just noting that before tonight, neither Ken Paxton nor John Cornyn had ever lost a race. Obviously, John Cornyn has now lost a race in pretty convincing fashion. But Ken Paxton wins. Now, I know he's a Republican. It's Texas. I know all of those things. But are we going to wind up on November 4th with, Paxton 54, Tallarico 46, and say, oh, we thought it might have been a thing, but actually, he is Trumpian in that regard, that a coalition exists for him. What is your impression of? We know, obviously, a runoff electorate in Texas loves Ken Paxton and hates John Cornyn, right? But now he's going to have to run a broader campaign.
Yeah.
What is your impression of his political skill and his ability to reach beyond these core folks who obviously have showed up?
Yeah, I mean, I think two things are true. I think Paxton has run and won statewide 3 times, including in 2018, right, in that tough year. That was, I think, other than Cruz O'Rourke, that was the second closest statewide race that year, and he won by, I would have to double check, I want to say like 3.5 points to a Democrat who doesn't even have a Wikipedia page, right? I mean, so this is going to be his best funded, most national race ever in a very nationalized environment. So this is a different kind of challenge. I think if you're a Democrat and you want to win in Texas, you have to mobilize your base, right? You have to win swing, independent, moderate voters, and you have to kind of depress the Republicans' turnout. And I think that's where Paxton has the advantage, right? Because he excites the base. And in a midterm in which the Republicans are the party in power and you're worried about Republican apathy, I think his strength could be that he does get the Republican base potentially excited. His weakness, right, as Cornyn has pointed out, would be, can he win over, those independent leaning voters, especially in Texas. Independents, that can be Hispanic men in South Texas. I mean, there's they're all over the map, sort of different iterations of that. But those are going to be the kind of factors at play.
So what kind of money for Tallarico are you hearing about? Because, I think we'll believe it when we see it, when it comes to the national party investing. Do I think there are going to be outside billionaires that are into this? There's going to be certainly big donors that want to play, and we've seen sort of this before. Beto O'Rourke sort of did it without a lot of national help. But what are you hearing, and is there something different this time that financially that you expect from the Democrats?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if, Senate Majority PAC wants to play in Texas, because it is really expensive. And, I think their board right now is number one, right, protect Georgia and Michigan, and number two, pick up North Carolina and Maine. And then it's that bucket of, Iowa, Ohio, Alaska, and Texas. And it's like, where do you rank those priorities? And of those, Texas is by far the most expensive. So I think that's all important to consider. The other question is like on an efficiency metric in the same thing. Do Republicans need to spend in Texas? Right now, SLF, right, the main Republican super PAC, hasn't booked any reservations in Texas. Will they feel like they need to move money there? Will they only do it if, the Democrats do it? Are they going to both spend nothing, both spend something, only one or the other? That'll be interesting to follow. But Tallarico has raised a ton of money.
Well, I also want to see, I'm curious if there's a game of chicken between the Senate Republicans, SLF, and the Trump super PAC. It's like, okay,
you got 350 million. You did this.
Guys, this is your race.
Yeah.
We'll handle Ohio. We'll handle Iowa. You handle this one, brother.
Yeah. No, there's a few different, what does SLF do? What do the Cornyn donors do? Like the Texas, because Cornyn has great relationships in the Texas donor class. Do River Oaks and Highland Park and these sort of high income neighborhoods come through for Paxton? Maybe not immediately, but maybe they get scared by September by the polls. I think it'll play out over the course of the summer and fall.
Gabby, can I ask one more Paxton sort of nuts and bolts question? Why is he such a bad fundraiser? And does he have a real campaign infrastructure that is built to handle, to your point, a race, whether he wins or loses, a race like he has never really run before?
Yeah, I mean, I think he definitely has the infrastructure. He's got the super PAC backing him, right? I think it's often hard for state candidates to transition to federal fundraising where there are these limits that don't exist. I mean, Texas has state level unlimited donors. And in the past, Paxton has been the beneficiary of a few hard right billionaires in West Texas that have not come through for him this time. Maybe they'll play, donate to the super PAC in the general. I don't know. But I think that transition is always hard. A lot of the donor class was behind Cornyn, or I think a lot were waiting to see, didn't want to cross the Senate Republicans, didn't want to cross Trump. So I think those factors were all kind of in the stew here with Paxton, but he's never been a dominant fundraiser.
Got it. Okay. It is easy when one person can write you a $5 million check. You don't really need to you need to have a couple relationships with rich people.
Right.
Governor Abbott has, I think, done a fairly good job of looking like he's a friend to all wings of the GOP.
Mm-hmm.
He certainly picked a few enemies when he did the school voucher thing, obviously, but how would you characterize Abbott's relationship with Paxton?
I mean, some of it, I think he's been, right, like you said, careful to kind of not upset any sort of wing of the party. Whether they campaign together on the trail, that'll be interesting. I think one thing I would note on that, Abbott has the best political machine and the most money in Texas politics, right? He's sitting on a huge amount of money. And so
he can bail Paxton out, or he can fund the coordinated,
absolutely,
all of those things on his own.
Yeah,
right?
He's kind of the rising tide. And that really mattered in 2018 when Cruz only won by 2.5. but Abbott won by way more than that. And Abbott spent tons of money all around the state, and that really lifted people who might have otherwise, Republicans who might have otherwise gone down. He's pledged to spend a ton of money in Harris County. He's going to spend in state, in state house races and stuff. So I think that might end up being the most meaningful dynamic, whether or not, whatever the extent of their personal relationship.
Hey, Gabby, I was curious. it seems like turnout, and we see some comments about this. People were wondering. It seems like turnout is going to be way down for the primary. I mean, like 1.35-ish million versus a little over 2 million.
Right.
And obviously, we do tend to see turnout go down in runoffs. Not always, but usually. But it does seem like a pretty large drop off from what we saw in the primary. So I was curious what you might make of that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say on that point, so I think the record for Texas runoff turnout was the Cruz-Dewhurst 2012, if people remember back, and that was about 1.1. Yeah, that was about 1.1. So this will, I think, end up being the highest turnout runoff in Texas Republican politics history. But obviously, like you mentioned, way lower than the primary. And Cornyn wanted high turnout. He felt like that was his path.
Mm-hmm.
He got high turnout for a runoff, but obviously, not at all compared to the primary.
Cruz won that one 57-43.
Yeah.
I wanted to.
Are you seeing a pattern there?
Yeah, exactly.
Runoff, yeah.
And David Dewhurst had plenty of money.
Right.
He's very, very rich. Gabby Birnbaum, Texas Tribune, just follow her on Twitter, but also in her Twitter bio, she calls herself a Jaden Daniels enthusiast. So do you have a Commanders? You want to do an early Commanders record pick?
Oh man, yeah. I feel like it's gonna be 9 and 8. I'm trying to temper expectations.
That'd be progress.
Better than last year, not as good as the year before. I'm scared about the beginning of the schedule.
First 6 games are just brutal.
Brutal.
Okay.
I'm trying to go to London, but yeah.
I'm excited. It's hardcore.
Yeah.
That's a good road trip. It's a tough campaign year. I'm lucky this year. The game I target for my Packers is a road game in early December in New Orleans. So I was glad it was post-election.
Smart.
But not
pre-election
early
travel
December
is tough.
in Green Bay,
Oh my God, worst.
No.
Thank you, Gabby. Follow Gabby.
Thanks,
This race will be this race will get the most national attention. I don't know if it'll be the most expensive. I don't know if it'll be the closest, but it's going to get the most national attention.
Chris, you and I are going to be doing this in a couple of weeks. You're going to be like, everybody's talking about Texas Senate. Like, we're going to get tired. It was like New York Senate.
True.
New York Senate with Hillary and Lazio.
Hillary and Rudy.
It was the least competitive Senate race in the country.
Totally.
And yet it was the only Senate race anybody wanted to talk
It'll
about.
be the only thing.
Now this one at least will be competitive, so it's not like the Hillary Lazio race.
Yeah.
But still.
All right, we got he often is. Have you noticed this? That this guy is often the closer.
He's our closer again tonight.
He likes coming in. He likes coming in when the game's tight. Although the game is not particularly tight tonight.
we need a consistent closer. So James,
that's right.
Our consistent closer.
James Downs. How are you, our friend?
I'm good. How you guys doing?
I mean,
James, you're the house guy.
Everything's called except 2 races.
Let's do house because they're not called.
Yeah, we got 2 not called.
Why don't we start with the 35th district, where we do know that Johnny Garcia has been projected as the Democratic nominee. This is sort of I would say the most notable, outstanding uncalled is the Republican side. Carlos de la Cruz is up about 9 points on State Representative John Lujan, but a lot of votes left. And, I guess Democrats avoided maybe a huge own goal in this district, but it was already going to be a tough one for them to compete in.
Yeah, right. I think, as has been said tonight, Democrats needed Garcia to even think about competing. I think my colleague Kirk was on here saying, if it wasn't Garcia getting through, and I just got off the phone with a plugged-in Democrat saying, we could confidently say that if it wasn't Garcia, this race is over, and that's not, not reinventing the wheel here. But obviously a big win for Blue Dogs, for progressives, everyone toward the end, right, coming in for Garcia, and it gives them a fighting chance. It gives Democrats a fighting chance. It's a Trump plus 10 seat, open seat. We've seen crazier things happen. It should make for an interesting race, no matter who the Republican nominee is.
Well, this is where the statewide dynamics only help Democrats in this one.
Oh, 100%.
And then talk about the Republican primary too, James.
Yeah, kind of an inoffensive primary, right? You have, you have De La Cruz, who's Trump-backed, and Lujan, who helped pass the map. And I think Abbott did him a solid by throwing his support behind him. But I think Republicans kind of staying out of it. You had the speaker following Trump and endorsing De La Cruz. Of course, there's a family element to it with Rep. Monica De La Cruz's brother being Carlos. So you have some of this House coalition backing De La Cruz. But I think from a sort of committee PAC point of view, I don't think they were really picking favorites. Again, that the similar profiles, pretty standard Republicans. I think the race would be litigated probably pretty similarly. The only thing is that De La Cruz has less of a record than Lujan. Lujan being a state legislator.
Skelly, can we just jump to 33?
Let's jump
all
to the
red, because I don't think that one is
current.
I don't think it's called yet. Former versus current. So Colin Allred, former NFL linebacker, right? Linebacker.
Yeah.
Yes, for the Titans, right?
For the Titans. Trying to come back. Is this his old seat, Jane? This is basically
it's mostly right. Of course, they retooled it, but it's largely his old seat. Yeah.
So he's ahead. What do you make of this?
I mean, there's still a lot of votes outstanding.
By the way, we've been sitting on 56 for a while.
Yeah, it's been
we
like
have
this
not had
for
a
long
drop
time.
in a long time. There's something up.
And
in
this is. I don't know if we
anyway.
mentioned this. This is Dallas area for people who are
But it's not all Dallas County.
No.
Right.
So Allred's home turf. He went to high school up here. Didn't go to school too far south. He went to Baylor. So obviously a familiar face in the area. I mean, again, we're waiting on a drop to come out, but I mean, look at those numbers. There's just not a lot of votes cast at all. I'm not too surprised, right? I think Allred has that name ID. He was flush with cash from his Senate runs. I spent some time with him when he was still running for Senate in October, down in the Valley, which of course is not this area, but he was popular down there. He still had clearly this enthusiasm about him. And Johnson's a freshman, so she doesn't have that established sort of resume that someone like Allred, who served multiple terms here, who was on the ballot last year, was going to be on the ballot again this year. The only thing I'm wondering about Allred is if some Texas Democrats are now kicking themselves now that they got Paxton, if they would have preferred maybe less of a potentially volatile candidate than Tallarico. With
more of a proven commodity.
I know what Chuck Schumer would have wanted. He would have wanted give me milk toast. No offense to Colin Allred, but if there was a knock on his candidacy against Cruz compared to Beto's, is that he was kind of he blended into the background.
Yeah, not dynamic.
But guess what? Background noise would have been perfect in a midterm year.
Well, absolutely. You see all the things that the RNC is hitting Tallarico on. It's only, you guys talked about it earlier. It's only going to continue through November, and 90. What did you guys say? Like 90% just hammering Tallarico. And
I would think. I think it might even be higher than that. To be totally honest. I mean, I'm not. Right. I'm just not sure that you can. I don't know that you gain anything by trying to rehabilitate Paxton. Really, ultimately, like I think it's a devil versus devil that we can define for you. I got one more for you, James. Chuck brought this up earlier. Kirk actually might have brought it up. The impact of Ken Paxton as Republican Senate nominee in a state that has been redrawn for Republicans to take 4 seats, which we know means that they have to slice the onion a little bit thinner in a lot of these places. What impact does Paxton have on Texas House races, and what impact does that then have on the fight for the House majority?
Yeah, I'm careful to overstate how impactful it is. Is it going to be the deciding factor in some of these races? I don't know. My gut says no. Might they make them more closer and more expensive, right? Like let's think about a Texas 15, for example, Bobby Polito versus Monica De La Cruz, a race that Democrats are, foaming at the mouth over. They really like the candidate. Tough seat, right? Trump plus 15 or 17, something like that. Does Paxton being atop the ticket in a blue year, does it make the race that much closer and therefore that much more expensive? I think certainly it could. But then, I think back to 2018. I mean, Abbott still won convincingly in 2018. 13 points, I believe he won by. He will be again atop the ticket. Chris, you of course mentioned, right? He's been around since forever.
Yeah.
And
he's going to spend more of his money on himself this time.
100%.
He's not going to have
environment's
the luxury
not good in the
before.
state or nationally for him. Yeah.
100%. So anyway, all that to say is I think the consequence of a Paxton nomination is you might see some of these races just become more expensive. Is it a tipping point in any race? I don't know. It's way too early to say. We'll see how Paxton polls in some of these district polling come, September, October, and I'm sure we are going to see a lot of, Paxton polling at this in Texas 28 and this in Texas 34.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see just how impactful his candidacy will be in, but I think it's going to ring up the price tag in a lot more of these races.
Yep. And that's the thing. I think that's so important for people to understand. Even if Paxton wins, and I think he has to be considered the favorite, and it's not a massive favorite, he has to be considered a favorite. It's Texas. Trump won by 14. The amount of money it's going to cost at the Senate level and at the House level, right, is significant. And that money comes out of a pot of money. That means it can't go to other places. That's just how it works. And when you have a state as expensive as Texas and a candidate who's not probably going to raise a bunch of money like Paxton, and you need it if you're Republicans, it does matter.
Yeah. And just one last thing is you're seeing, there's not a whole lot of, as we know from redistricting and even before this round, there's not a ton of competitive House seats in Texas. So you're really concentrating on 4 or 5 House seats really. Yep. And Republicans have their eyes on 2 of them in the Valley that they really want to flip. So these races were already going to be expensive. I know they're not the most expensive media markets, but they probably just got that much more expensive, and that matters. It really does.
So there's not a new, but you're not adding new one. What I get to answer Chris's larger point.
Yeah,
2 more races haven't come on the
because of Paxton.
I don't think so. It's too early to make that determination. And just, thinking about the map right now and just how gerrymandered it is, I don't see anything new spawning out. But, who knows? Who knows what the war and the economy and whatnot, as I said earlier, crazier things have happened.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the question. Is it a D+7 environment or is it a D+14 environment? Those are 2 very, obviously very different things with different races that are included.
Absolutely.
All right. James Downs, National Journal, always the closer. Thank you.
Guys, great to see you.
Another save, James. Another save.
I know.
Add another one to the,
I mean, I was thinking it might be a little bit of a later night, but I haven't eaten dinner, so I am thrilled.
No, I told my family 10 p.m. was more likely than not, and we nailed it.
Do we want to do takeaways before?
Yeah, sure.
Skelly, you want to start? I don't want to put you on the spot, but you also can take any good ones that Chuck and I might think of. So go.
Happy to do that. I think, look, Paxton winning by this large of a margin is I think a surprise. Perhaps it says it's a combination of Trump's endorsement plus just some turnout stuff in a runoff. You just got a more conservative electorate, fewer people showing up, and more sort of committed members of the Republican Party, committed MAGA Republicans showing up and making up a larger share of the electorate, and that was bad for Cornyn, as we've seen it play out. I think one thing that I think is worth remembering, looking ahead to the general election, is that Paxton wasn't polling all that differently from Cornyn against Tallarico, and that was actually a little bit surprising because obviously much of Cornyn's pitch was that, hey, I'm the more electable option. Now, I'm not saying that wouldn't turn out to be the case, and obviously we're not going to be able to prove counterfactuals one way or the other, because I think there are plenty of reasons to think Paxton has some weaknesses that could be vulnerable. But obviously it matters who the other candidate is, and Tallarico has certainly excited a lot of Democrats. But I think that initial ad, we can see potential weaknesses that Republicans can capitalize on from his past statements and use his own words against him. So I think there are reasons that Paxton could be seen as a weaker than average general election candidate for Republicans, and it gives Democrats an opportunity. But I think we shouldn't be too quick to just assume that he's making it more of a even just that he's so weak that Democrats are suddenly in a, where's the Kalshi market going to be tomorrow on this? So they're going to have Tallarico like more likely to win. Like, I would think that's a bad. That's not right.
Well, it's funny you bring it up. It's 55-45.
Tallarico.
Paxton. It's
Paxton Tallarico.
Paxton.
And Democrats, Republicans and Democrats Senate control is 52-48 now, which is a slight tightening from what
R to D. 52R, 48D. Yeah.
So you've seen perception move a little bit. And my guess is, by the way, 55-45 feels about right.
I agree. In terms of odds.
Right.
Yeah.
Odds, yeah.
Let me go next. I'll let Chuck close it out. I think the fundamental question, and Jeffrey touched on this, who is James Tallarico? That's it. Is James Tallarico a youth pastor who can quote Bible verses and talk to voters who wouldn't think they could be for a Democrat? Or is he a God is six genders, mask wearing, trans loving, the fight over and that, honestly, that will probably start tomorrow morning. I mean, it started tonight on Twitter and all that, but like in a paid advertising way, it could well start very soon. That to me is like, what does he become? Right? Because he still isn't that well known. That Democratic primary, which was, again, 84 days ago, it wasn't that heavily spending. Certainly Crockett wasn't really spending heavily on defining him in a negative way. I'm fascinated to see what for all the people in the state who don't really know who James Tallarico is, who is he? Yeah. Who does he become? Chuck.
9 p.m. Eastern time tonight was the time of death for the Bush wing of the Republican Party in the state of Texas.
Yeah.
And I think we haven't done the proper obituary for the Bush family in some ways created the Texas Republican Party. Okay. There really was no Texas Republican Party. John Tower wins, it starts things. George H.W. Bush was as important in the creation and sustainability of this party for generations. And I do think that, in some ways the Railroad Commission race is the exclamation point, right?
Yeah.
If you're with the establishment at all, you're out. And
no matter what the other guy says, even if the other guy wants to deport 100 million people,
what Armit shared with us earlier, that I think is a fair critique of some of us nationally, that it's just not fully understood the vibes inside the Texas Republican Party, even though it has produced Ted Cruz. And yes, John Cornyn survived, and yes, Rick Perry survived, but you know what? This isn't Rick Perry and John Cornyn's Republican Party. This is a different Republican Party. And yes, it impeached Ken Paxton, but he survived.
Yep.
Ken Paxton has already beaten the Bush family, right? Every time there's been this wing of the party versus the establishment, this wing has won, right? It goes back to Ted Cruz in 2012 against David Dewhurst. So I do think we ought to do a little bit of a fond farewell to the Bush wing of the party. The question is, have they gone over their skis, right? And that's what we're going to find out in November. Yep. I do think I'm of two minds. We've seen somebody like Ken Paxton win a race that we thought, well, there's no way if this race is a referendum on this person that they can win. Well, Donald Trump won. So the question is is it good or bad? Number one, this is going to be a referendum more on Tallarico than Paxton. I'm now more convinced of that. But number two, is that a bad thing for Tallarico? Because maybe you need to be, one of the things that we've underestimated about Trump is that when he's the main character, it's harder to get him off stage.
Yep. He doesn't do as well. He's better running against something than he is defending himself.
If this is about Tallarico, well, then people will be, it might weirdly benefit him a little bit. But ultimately, look, he's got to figure out how to sell himself as just a normie,
Yeah.
And I don't know. We're going to find out if he can do it. Graham Plattner has proven to be Teflon. He's a talented political athlete. He is essentially, like Wonder Woman and her crazy bracelets that bullets bounce off of, right?
Yep.
Right. Like Plattner just sort of deflects.
It is amazing.
Yada, yada, yada. can Tellerico use the New Testament and do the same thing? I don't know. Right. I'm a cautious skeptic on him, but here's what we do know. It's a $500 million mistake by Donald Trump.
I mean,
that's probably the more important development tonight.
Yep. Although it's probably not a mistake. I mean, I don't think he cares. He had to know. Anyway,
you're right. It's not a mistake.
But it's a $400 million mistake for the Republican Party that the Republican Party is going to have to fix.
It's John Thune who thinks it's a mistake.
Yeah.
Put it that way.
Next Tuesday we will be here. Skelly, you want to do a quick preview of what we're watching for next Tuesday, and then we'll say au revoir.
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, the big races next week. California's top 2 primary for governor. A lot of the other California House races. Obviously, California is a little slow to count. So
they should be done by the 4th of July.
Yeah. So
okay.
It's going to be a multi-day live stream.
I was going to say, I'd say for we'll just be going. Iowa's Senate primary on the Democratic side to find out who will face Ashley Hinson, who's the presumptive favorite on the Republican side, and what could be a very competitive race. I think South Dakota is going to have a pretty interesting gubernatorial primary.
But there's a Republican primary for governor in Iowa too. That while Feenstra's favored, it's not a slam dunk. So that's going to be.
Yeah. So I mean, there are a number of contests, and that I think will be, there'll be plenty of interesting things to dig into.
It feels like Iowa, California, and that South Dakota race, because New Jersey's also Tuesday. So will we get a Tom Kane Jr.?
Will Tom Kane will we get a picture or video of Tom Kane?
Yeah, it's worth noting that there'll be a number of New Jersey races where we'll get nominees in some interesting Democratic primaries. So the Democratic primary to face Kane, the Democratic primary in the 12th district, which is to succeed Bonnie Watson Coleman. That's a safe D district, but there's like 18 candidates. So lots of interesting stuff.
We will be here. Stay tuned.
Hey, Skelly, you're going to like this. Our buddy Alexander Theodorius, if you know him, my buddy Alex.
Sure.
Yeah. He loves to note that you're a UVA alum. He has reminded me that both Cornyn and Paxton are UVA law alums. How about that?
Skelly knew that.
Hey, so is Chip Roy. So,
apparently if you want to learn the law and practice it in Texas, you go to Charlottesville, Virginia.
Oh my God.
Apparently.
All right, everyone. Take care.
Au revoir.
Thank you. Spurs down 11 at half.
There you go.
No, okay.
The closest race involving Texas tonight. It's not in Texas because it's in Oklahoma City.
It's a tough night for Texas incumbents, huh?
Yeah. All right, everybody. Well done, Chuck. See you, Jeffrey.
Thanks, guys.